You leave behind the corpse garden, the scent of putrefaction no longer clinging to your senses. Each step away from the grim place is a step into something new, something that almost feels like a dream, though you know better than to trust such feelings in this world. The transition is gradual, the creeping shift that feels almost imperceptible at first, but soon becomes undeniable. The ground changes beneath your feet, the crunch of dead leaves giving way to something softer. The soil, once dry and cracked, now feels damp. Patches of moss begin to appear, spreading in uneven swaths that grow thicker the further you walk. The color shifts, and what was once a lifeless ashen gray becomes a deeper green, touched with hints of indigo and violet. The moss glows, just enough to cast a soft luminescence across the path, painting everything in muted hues. The trees change as well, and the gnarled, emaciated remains that twisted up from the corpse-laden soil are slowly replaced by trunks that are taller and straighter. Their bark is not the dull, dead gray of the garden, but instead a silvery sheen that catches the light of the moss beneath. The branches stretch high above, tangled together in a canopy that lets only the barest slivers of twilight filter through. It feels as though the world is folding in on itself, the sky disappearing beneath layers of shimmering leaves. And at some point, you seem to have left the cavernous city of Thol completely. The air grows lighter, carrying with it a strange scent. Something floral, perhaps, though it's not quite right. It's subtle at first. It's just a hint that you catch when the wind shifts. But as you move deeper, it becomes more pronounced. There's a sweetness to it, almost mawkish. It's different from the stench of rot, but oddly no less unsettling. There is something disconcerting about it. Light changes here too. The dull, amber glow that hung over the corpse garden fades, replaced by a light that is neither day nor night. It's a soft bluish hue, an eternal twilight that casts peculiar patterns. The vegetation grows denser, the moss underfoot thickening until it almost feels like you're walking on a plush carpet. Vines twist up from the ground, wrapping around the bases of trees, their leaves wide and dark, basking in the twilight. Here and there, flowers bloom, pale and gentle, their petals glowing meekly with an inner light. They seem to turn towards you as you pass, their petals shifting, almost as if they're reaching for you. You keep your distance, not trusting anything in this place to be harmless. There's a stillness here, a quiet that feels different from the dead silence of the garden. It's not the absence of sound, but rather the presence of something else. You can hear your own breath, the rustle of your steps, and the soft clink of dusk's embrace against your side. But beneath it all, there's something more. You're an intruder walking in a place that was never meant for you. You take a breath, steadying yourself, each inhale filled with a strange floral scent that seems to grow stronger. You glance back, catching one last glimpse of the corpse garden in the distance, its skeletal trees now just silhouettes against the horizon. It feels like another world, separated by more than just distance. Ahead of you lies a glade, an uncharted place untouched by any kind of light you know, a place that seems to exist somewhere between beauty and desolation. The silvery trunks of trees catch a gentle light in strange ways, giving them an almost fluid appearance, as though they are rippling beneath an unseen current. The leaves above rustle more often now, not from any breeze you can feel, but as if they're speaking to one another, passing along word of your approach. Small clusters of glowing fungi have begun to appear along the path, their lights flickering sporadically. The color of the glow changes subtly as you pass, cool blue shifting into a soft purple and then back again. You try not to look at them, their changing hues unsettling you in a way that you can't quite put into words. They line the edges of a narrow trail, almost marking your way forward, guiding you deeper into the glade. The air is rich with moisture now, the floral scent blending with something earthier. You feel the dampness in your lungs as you breathe, each breath denser than the last. Your eyes are drawn to the flowers that grow in the crooks of the trees, their pale petals trembling ever so slightly, even in the absence of wind. They seem almost eager, leaning toward you, reaching for the warmth of your passing presence. You can't shake the feeling that they are aware of you, that everything here is aware of you. The forest path leads you to a small glade. At its center lies a shimmering pool, its surface as still as glass, reflecting the fragile glow of the surrounding flora. Shadows dance across the surface, conjured by the twisting vines and broad-leaved plants at the edge of the water. A feeling stirs in your chest, a soft pull, something unspoken and almost magnetic, drawing you closer to the pool. You can see your reflection there, dim and ghostly, distorted by the soft luminescent plants encircling the water. For a moment, you feel as though you're looking at another, something pulled from the recesses of memory, or perhaps a warning of things yet to come. In the edge of your vision, a movement stirs, a ripple in the air, accompanied by the slightest rustle of leaves. With a practiced flick, you draw Dusk's embrace, the blade catching the muffled, ghostly light from the shimmering pool. The weapon feels steady in your grip, an anchor in the eerie stillness of the glade. You move cautiously, each step calculated as your eyes scan the shifting shadows, looking for whatever stirred in the periphery of your vision. The air grows heavy, carrying a chill that prickles along your spine, pressing against your chest with a subtle yet undeniable weight. From the far side of the pool, a soft glow begins to materialize, faint and flitting, like a candle struggling against the wind. You tense, tightening your grip as the glow strengthens, casting long, wavering shadows across the water's surface. And then, emerging from between two ancient trees, steps a figure cloaked in tattered robes, a silhouette barely more than a wisp in the veiled glow. In his hands, he clutches a lantern, its glass dull and cracked, but inside a pale light stirs with an uneven rhythm. A small man emerged from the far side of the glade. His face remains hidden beneath the hood, and the darkness swallowing any features that might offer some hint of his intentions. The lantern in his grip flickers, the light within dimming and flaring. Each sway seems to convey a message. The silence stretches, weighted with unspoken words, as though the very trees lean in to listen. The lantern bearer lifts his lantern slightly, holding it level with his chest, and the light flashes once, a slow and deliberate glow, brighter than before. He pauses, waiting, the light illuminating the ground between you. You watch, heart pounding. Another flash, brighter, lingering for a heartbeat longer, and then darkness. A pause. One short flash, and then the lantern dims again. This pattern repeats, methodical, and you begin to recognize the pulse as his only means of communication. You realize that each flash of light is a question or a demand. You hold still, feeling the intensity of his gaze, unseen but undeniable. It is as if he waits for an answer, something beyond mere words. But no voice comes to mind, only a deep-seated instinct telling you that this exchange holds more consequences than any simple dialogue. The lantern-bearer steps closer, the light on his lantern growing more insistent, each flicker a silent entreaty. You do not lower Dusk's embrace, keeping the blade raised between you and the figure as he closes the distance. The pool beside you ripples, though no breeze stirs in the air. The spectral glow of the surrounding plants tremble with each pulse of the lantern's light. And then he stops. With one last flash, his lantern illuminates his outstretched hand. In his palm lies a small, broken fragment, rough-edged, worn, as though it had been clawed free from some ancient artifact. The edges of the shard shimmer faintly, catching the pale light with a hint of otherworldly iridescence. He offers it to you, his hand unwavering, though he speaks no words. The light from his lantern softens, casting an almost tender glow over the shard. It is an offering, perhaps, or a demand, a symbol meant to draw you closer or to test your resolve. The lantern bearer's grip remains extended, the light casting his form in a way that makes him seem less solid. The shard glints in his hand, radiating a subtle warmth you can feel from where you stand, and the Bone Sovereign's crown vibrates against your wrist. The subtle vibration of the Bone Sovereign's crown against your wrist pulls your attention, its weight thrumming in sync with the lantern light. You felt it stir before, but never this keenly, as if something within the artifact recognizes the shard, resonating with a hidden memory long buried beneath layers of time and decay. The lantern bearer holds steady, his hand outstretched, the shard shimmering with an iridescent gleam that seems to cut through the thick silence of the glade. For a moment, the world narrows to the dusky light of his lantern, the cold weight of dusk's embrace in your hand, and the warmth emanating from that shard. It's almost inviting, yet laced with something inexplicably ancient and foreboding. You glance down at the Bone Sovereign's crown encircling your wrist. The dulled bone appears darker than usual, its intricate patterns barely visible, but the vibrations intensify, urging you forward as though it too were entangled in the strange encounter. The lantern bearer's unseen gaze feels sharper now, and pressing. Yet he remains still, only his lantern flickering in an expectant pattern. You reach forward, your fingers brushing against the shard. It is warm to the touch, and smoother than it looked. The Bone Sovereign's crown thrums even louder as you lift the shard from the lantern bearer's palm. The lantern flashes once in acknowledgement, and the fragment hums in your grasp, and a faint ethereal sensation ripples through your arm, emitted from the shard in your wrist, resonating through the crown's intricate band. An impression, a wordless sense, filters into your mind. A warning, a whisper, a glance of something once whole, now shattered. The lantern bearer steps back, his lantern light dimming, casting long, twisted shadows across the glade as he watches you. He makes no move to retrieve the shard, nor does he advance. Instead, he stands rooted in place, his hooded face unreadable. His presence seems diminished, almost insubstantial now, as if the exchange had drained him in some way, pulling at the very fabric of his existence, yet his gaze, or the feeling of it, bore into you with the weight of expectations, an unspoken demand that you recognize the significance of, but the request is no more clear. For a brief moment, you glimpse something in your mind's eye, a flickering vision of a place unknown, yet familiar. There's a sense of grandeur, of something vast and imposing, shattered and buried. The shard vibrates subtly, resonating with the Bone Sovereign's crown, and the vision becomes sharper. Towering monoliths draped in shadow, each inscribed with glyphs of a forgotten language. The shard, you realize, once belonged to this place, a fragment torn from something massive, something primal and immutable. The lantern bearer's lantern flares suddenly, just once, and it halts the vision. And with that final flare, the lantern bearer withdraws, his form dissolving into the mist at the edge of the glade. The Bone Sovereign's crown grows calm against your wrist, but the shard continues its subtle thrumming, a beckoning call that seems to urge you deeper into the glade, towards something yet unseen, something that lies beyond the veil of shadow and silence. A sudden agonizing heat rips through your wrist as the symbiotic crown clenches, twisting violently. The pain courses up your arm, spreading through your chest like hot shards of glass, winding down your opposite arm until it reaches your clenched fist. Your grip on the shard loosens and you shake your hand instinctively, trying to rid yourself of the searing sensation. But as your fingers begin to relax, you feel something within your palm. A foreign, writhing presence binding itself to you. You open your hand and what you see makes your breath catch. 5 vein-like tendrils, dark and squirming, snake out from your palm, wrapping tightly around the shard. Each tendril connects back to the symbiotic crown on your wrist, binding the shard to you in some grotesque display of ownership. The veins waver with a life of their own, tethering the shard so deeply into your flesh that you can feel each heartbeat resonating between the crown and the stone. a shared rhythm between man and artifact. Reflexively, you grasp the stone, pulling hard in an attempt to wrench it free, but the tension on the vines only intensifies. It's as if each tug stretches your very soul, the anchor rooted somewhere deep within the crown's dark symbiosis with your body. Every movement pulls not just on your palm, but irradiates in agony across your nerves, an internal network bound inseparably to the symbiotic crown. The shard remains fixed, locked into your flesh by something older and more insidious than mere muscle or bone. The glade around you seems to darken, the twilight deepening as if the very realm recoils from this merging. The shard shakes, resonating with an internal heat that bleeds into your veins, an otherworldly energy pushing through your blood like fire. Beneath the pain, you sense a new awareness seething in from the shard and into your consciousness. Places unseen yet familiar, ancient symbols that float hazily in your mind, figures blurred, all glimpsed through the shard's unsettling communion with you. The symbiotic crown tightens on your wrist as if to assert control over this strange new connection, a shuddering response to the stone's influence. For a fleeting moment, you sense a clash between the energies of the crown and the shard, like two beasts locked in a silent, internal battle for dominance. The pain flares and your vision crosses as if slipping between worlds. And then at last, the pain settles into a dull, throbbing ache and the veins retract slightly, though they leave the shard deeply embedded in your palm, fused as if it had always been there. The glade is silent, watching as though it too holds its breath. You stare at the shard now settled within the surface of your skin, aware that it has become an inseparable part of you, a key or perhaps a curse. You press on through the twilight glade, your steps muffled by the thick layer of moss that covers the ground. The shard embedded in your palm pulls gently, subtle but insistent, urging you in a particular direction. The glade itself seems to change as you move. The trees seem even taller, their branches twisting into an intricate pattern overhead, casting shifting shadows that play tricks on your eyes. Ahead, something catches your attention. A cluster of stone pillars, ancient and worn, standing together in a circle. Vines creep up their surface, weaving around faded carvings and symbols that appear almost familiar, though you can't place why. The stones exude an air of age, of a time long past and largely forgotten, as if they were a part of a ritual or a meeting place once sacred to someone or something. As you step closer, the shard in your palm grows warmer, almost imperceptibly. It's as though it recognizes something here, a resonance between the stone and the artifact embedded in your flesh. You reach out, fingers grazing the surface of one pillar, feeling the grooves of the carvings, each line seemingly drawn with purpose. Your gaze moves over the carvings, a series of figures, each one bearing a small stone, much like the shard you carry. They were arranged in different stances, some with arms raised, others kneeling, but all facing a central point where a shape is carved, something abstract. The shard's thrum intensifies, drawing your hand toward a spot on the pillar where the carving is most intricate. You hesitate, glancing around the glade as if expecting an attack, yet there's only silence, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant calls of twilight creatures. Bracing yourself, you press the shard against the carved stone, and immediately a strange warmth spreads through your hand. In that moment, a sensation flares in your mind, not quite a memory, but a feeling, an impression of movement. A door somewhere has opened. You can hear the creak of ancient wood or perhaps metal yawning in some unseen place, but as quickly as it came, the sensation fades. Reluctantly, you pull your hand back and the shard's shaking subsides, returning to its softer rhythmic beat. You take a breath, steadying yourself, and cast one last glance at the pillars, committing the location to memory before turning to follow the invisible pull that beckons you further into the depths of the twilight glade. As you walk, you notice subtle changes in the landscape. The trees bark marked with unusual patterns, spirals and lines that seem to shift and wave. Shadows deepen, stretching across the ground in ways that defy the murky light filtering in through the branches. The shard's pull grows more pronounced, guiding you through the winding paths and over thick roots, each step taking you closer to something. You pause as you come upon a bramblescape, a dense shroud of brambles and thorny shrubs surrounding a single, ancient-looking doorframe set into the earth as though it was a gateway to something beyond the Twilight glade. But there is no door within it, no building to accompany it, only the empty frame, its edges lined with symbols similar to those on the pillars. You feel the shard's warmth in your hand, and for a moment, the doorframe seems to shimmer, almost as if daring you to step through. The air grows strange with the mingling scents of moss and ancient wood, layered with something metallic that leaves a taste on the back of your tongue. Shadows deepen around you, and a ghostly light flickers, taking on a bluish cast that feels unnatural, as though Twilight itself has gathered here in greater concentration. However, the quiet insistence of the shard pulls you forward, urging you to leave the enigmatic doorframe behind and continue deeper into the glade. As you move, the wetland path becomes more treacherous, trees clustering tightly on either side until they form a natural tunnel of twisted trunks and hanging vines alongside a small brook. The ground is soft beneath your feet, and the quiet of the place begins to close in, amplifying each breath, each heartbeat. The shard's pull grows stronger, almost insistent now, leading you along the narrow stream. Ahead of you stands a peculiar monument, an obelisk of dark stone, its surface rough and weathered, but carved with symbols that seem to sway in the dim light. The shard in your palm reacts immediately, warming, its veiled dancing synchronized with the subtle thrum that seems to radiate from the obelisk itself. You approach cautiously, eyes tracing the unfamiliar script. Some of the symbols match those on the pillars you encountered earlier, while others seem new, almost as if they were added in haste, like notes scribbled on an ancient manuscript. Reaching out, you place a tentative hand on the stone. The instant your skin meets the cool surface, a low hum reverberates through your body. But it's not a sound. Well, not exactly. It's more like a vibration that you feel in your bones, an unspoken resonance between the shard and the obelisk. Images flash through your mind, fragmented and faint, like reflections seen through rippling water. You see figures shrouded in shadow, each one bearing a shard like yours, standing before similar monuments, their faces obscured but their intent clear. They are searching as you are, drawn by something beyond understanding, something deeply rooted in these lands. The shard flares with warmth, and for a brief moment, the symbols on the obelisk go brighter, illuminating the clearing with a soft spectral light. The glow fades almost as quickly as it came, but it leaves behind a sense of presence, as if something within the obelisk has stirred, awakened by your touch. And then without warning, the ground beneath your feet shifts, almost like a heartbeat. The moss ripples and a low vibration spreads throughout the clearing, stirring the air. You stagger back, steadying yourself as the earth trembles slightly, and from within the obelisk, a hoarse voice, or perhaps an echo, whispers through the glade. The words are unintelligible, a murmuring that flows like water over stone, but you can feel the weight of them, the urgency of the message meant for those who bear the shards. The hum subsides, but the shard's pull grows again, guiding you forward. Whatever force binds you to the strange artifact seems to grow with each encounter, each fragment of ancient lore whispered through the symbols and the echoes. You have no clear answers, only the unshakable sense that you are bound to this place, connected by an ancient purpose you have yet to fully understand. Looking out across the area, you notice something else ahead in the moss-laden hollow. Standing in the center, half concealed by the shadows and light, is a figure. At first, it almost looks like part of the glade itself, skin a muted shade of blue, blending perfectly with the faint glow of the surroundings. You take a cautious step forward, dusk's embrace slipping quietly into your hand, and as you approach, the figure's features come into sharp focus. He has the body of a man, gaunt and wiry, with limbs that look like they haven't moved in ages, but his head is dominated by an enormous forehead, so large that it seems to root him to the earth, His forehead bulges out and then sweeps back, the skin taut and smooth, stretching upward before merging back into thick, twisted roots that anchor him to the ground, like the trees around him. His eyes meet yours, wide and unblinking, an expression of animal-like bewilderment frozen on his face. He doesn't speak. He simply stares, his eyes large and glassy, reflecting the pale glade light with a bewilderment that is both unsettling and strangely pitiful. The eyes are intensely blue, and in their depth you see something, a recognition or perhaps a plea. You take a step closer, cautious but curious. He doesn't react, doesn't move, only follows your approach with his wide-eyed gaze. Up close, you can see how the roots have entangled his arms, mostly binding his body in place, as though the earth itself had claimed him. His lips part slightly, but no sound escapes. His face is expressionless, almost eerily blank, save for that look of wide-eyed shock. The shard in your palm warms in response, as if reacting to the creature's presence. You feel an odd tug, almost a compulsion to reach out, to see if there's any understanding to be found in this strange figure. Your hand stretches toward him, and his eyes flicker slightly, a mask of something like hope or fear. As your hand draws near, the roots around his forehead quiver, tightening slightly. A strange ripple flows across his massive brow, and for a split second, you catch a glimpse of something beneath his skin, a pattern like lines or sigils bubbling up from within, just visible beneath the stretched blue flesh of his forehead. The lines pulse, dimly resonating with the shard in your palm, almost as though they are trying to communicate with it. You pause, torn between curiosity and caution. His eyes bore into you, but still he does not speak. Instead, he lifts one hand slowly, trembling with the effort, and points a long, thin finger at the shard in your hand. His gaze flicks between your hand and his own massive forehead, the silent gesture as clear as any spoken word. He seems to want something, though it's unclear if he wishes for help or merely acknowledgement of some shared bond. An uneasy silence fills the space between you two, and for a long moment, the two of you simply stare at one another in the twilight and the unspoken connection between the shard and the markings beneath his skin. Then, from deeper within the glade, you hear quiet rustling, like something heavy shifting through the brush. The sound is distant but unmistakable, and it stirs the creature before you into a trembling tension. His eyes widen even more, his mouth opening in a silent gasp, and he looks at you as if pleading, though you can't discern the nature of his silent request. The faded light of the glade darkens as the rustling draws nearer, and the creature's trembling intensifies, his gaze locked onto yours, urging you to act. You tighten your grip on Dusk's embrace, bracing yourself as the rustling grows louder and closer. The bewildered figure rooted before you remains motionless, his gaze locked on you with a look of utter terror, his wide eyes flicking between the trees and you as if expecting death itself to emerge from the shadows. The underbrush shifts, and then it appears, a creature unlike anything you've ever seen. It has the stature of a large, predatory beast, somewhere between a stag and a feline in shape, with a graceful, muscular build. Its once majestic antlers twist up from its head like ancient branches, shimmering insubstantially, though the light they cast seems faded, as if dulled by some unseen decay. The beast's fur, matted and frayed, is streaked with patches of exposed, raw skin, a sickly gray where the flesh shows through, giving it the appearance of something both majestic and deeply cursed. Its eyes glow with a fierce light, flickering like dying embers, and as it steps forward, its body ripples with an otherworldly aura. It turns its gaze on you, eyes narrowing, and a low, rumbling growl emanates from deep within its chest. You feel a surge of raw, unsettling energy as its gaze pierces you, a sense of something primal, fierce, and bound to the glade's twilight magic. Its presence fills the clearing, oppressive and ancient, as if it belongs to the glade in a way that you, and perhaps even the bewildered figure, do not. The shard in your palm flares, growing hotter, and you realize with a chill that it's reacting to the beast, as though warning you of the danger it represents. You steel yourself, raising Dusk's embrace as the creature lowers its head, antlers glinting, and it lets out a guttural snarl that sends a shiver through the clearing. In a flash, it lunges toward you, its movements graceful but not strained, as though held back by some unseen burden. You dodge to the side, feeling the rush of air as its claws swipe past you, kicking up loose dirt and leaves. The shard hums, almost vibrating with the creature's nearness, as if it were feeding off the beast's corrupted magic. You're forced into a desperate back and forth, sidestepping and parrying as the creature lunges at you again, its claws flashing and teeth bared, and it's fast. Faster now than you anticipated, and each attack drives you closer to the bewildered figure who watches the battle with the same bewilderment, unable to flee, his massive forehead binding him to the ground like a twisted root. The beast circles you, growling, but then it pauses, its gaze shifting towards the rooted figure. In that moment, a sickening realization settles over you. The creature is not only here for you, but for him as well. The creature changes its trajectory in a heartbeat, lunging toward the bewildered figure with a feral snarl. You call out, but he can't react, frozen in fear as the beast's claw rake across his arm. A thin line of dark blue blood drips down his skin, staining the moss beneath him. He makes no sound, but his eyes widen further, an expression of shocked pain breaking through his previous bewilderment. Without hesitation, you charge, swinging Dusk's embrace in a wide arc that catches the creature's flank. The blade slices through the withered fur, sending up a faint, ghostly wisp of smoke where it strikes, as if the creature's decayed flesh cannot bleed but merely disperses into the air. It rears back, snarling, its gaze fixed on you now with a renewed hatred, and for a moment, its eyes flash brighter, the ember growing, flaring as it prepares to lunge again. You step between the creature and the bewildered figure, gripping Dusk's embrace tightly as the beast circles, pacing, and its claws digging into the mossy ground. A dark energy rushes through its body, an unnatural aura that seems to drain the light from around it, leaving only shadows and the weakened shine of a dying glow. Then it leaps, jaws open and claws extended, aiming for you with terrifying speed. You throw yourself to the side, feeling the whoosh of air as it narrowly misses, its claws grazing your shoulder. Pain sears through you, but there's no time to focus on it. The beast has already turned, and before you can react, it lunges again, this time catching the bewildered figure's leg in its jaws. The figure lets out a soft, breathy gasp, eyes wide with horror as the beast's teeth sink into him, dark blood seeping down his legs, staining the roots that bind him. You surge forward, driving Dusk's embrace downward and burying it deep in the creature's back. The beast howls, a twisted and haunting sound, and it releases the bewildered figure, its body shuddering as your blade sinks deeper. Its fur and flesh seem to dissolve around the wound, as though eaten away by some unseen rot, and it staggers back, the ember-like eyes dimming further. But even weakened, it's not yet finished. With a final, desperate lunge, it tries to swipe at you, but its movements are sluggish and energy drained. You dodge and counter, driving your blade into its chest, feeling a shudder pass through the creature as the light in its eyes flickers and finally fades. It collapses to the ground, and its body dissipating into the same smoky wisp, leaving nothing but a languid, foul odor lingering in the air. The bewildered creature stares at the spot where the beast fell, breathing heavily. Blood still drips from his wounds, his expression shifting from fear to a strange, almost empty resignation. His gaze moves to you, and for a brief moment, you sense a silent gratitude, or perhaps just relief that the creature is gone. The shard in your palm grows warm again, as if acknowledging the victory or perhaps the sacrifice. You turn to the bewildered figure, and then you approach him. His eyes grow wide again as you maneuver your blade. You cut a section of your frayed sleeves, and you dress the wounds of the bewildered creature. His look is one of profound shock, disbelief at the simple and kind gesture. When you're done, he merely lifts a trembling hand and points deeper into the glade, the direction from which the creature had emerged. His gaze is distant, but intense, as if he sees something he cannot express. You nod, giving him one last look before stepping forward, following the path he indicated, the shard's warmth guiding you forward. When the path opens into a willowed grove, you find yourself drawn to a pool of water at its center. It's impossibly still and dark as polished obsidian, much like the first one you came across. The shard in your palm grows warmer, its pulse syncing with your own heartbeat and responding to the presence of the pool itself. You stand at the edge, hesitant yet unable to resist the pull to look closer, to see whatever secrets might lie beneath the shadowed surface. And as you lean over, your reflection stares back, familiar, but cast in a strange, colorless light of the glade. Then slowly it shifts. The face in the water becomes something else. A stranger's expression fading in and out of view. A face that could be yours, but altered, hollowed by a darkness that creeps into your eyes, filling them with a wild, feral animosity. It's almost as if this reflection is showing you what you could become, or perhaps what you've already left behind. A shiver runs through you and you break your gaze, looking up from the pool. At first, it's nothing more than a light sensation, a hint at something unseen, but then it grows. The silence becomes tangible, closing in on you, and you realize, with a growing unease, that you're not alone. From the shadowed trees, a figure emerges. It moves slowly, guiding through the twilight like mist, its form shrouded in robes that billow around it in layers of nightfall's blues and deep gray. There's no face beneath its hood, only a void of darkness that seems to pull at the light around it, creating an aura that both invites and repels. You feel the shard respond instantly, heating up in your hand, quickening in rhythm with the figure's movements, as if drawn to this strange, haunting presence. The figure drifts to the edge of the pool, near you, and stops, its hooded head turning toward you. Though you can't see its eyes, the sensation of being watched is unmistakable. "Look." A disembodied voice beckons, carried on an unfamiliar breeze in the glade, urging you to look again at the water. Its hand raises from the folds of its robe, slender and ghostly, pointing to the pool with a command. Drawn back to the water, you stare once more into the dark depths, and this time the image shifts completely. You see the same glade and the same pool, but it's filled with other figures, men and women, creatures both human and inhuman, standing around the water's edge. They bear shards like yours, embedded in their skin or clutched tightly in trembling hands. Their faces hold expressions of longing, of fear and sorrow, each one looking down into the water as if it contains a truth they cannot bear yet cannot resist. The shard in your hand flares hotter, nearly burning now, as you feel yourself pulled deeper into the vision, each figure in the water etched into your mind. Their expressions shift, twisting with unspoken pain, mouths moving in silent cries, eyes wide and hollow. One figure raises their hand to their face, covering their eyes as though unable to look any longer, and black fluid seeps around their fingers, while others turn their gaze directly on you, pleading, begging for you to do something. A murmur rises from across the pool, and you pull back slightly, your gaze moving to the figure beside you. But it hasn't moved, and its hand hovers over the water, stirring ripples across the reflection. In a voice that echoes like distant thunder, it speaks, each word resonating in the glade, filling the silence with an ominous presence. "Each bound by purpose, each tied to fate. The path lies open, the price must be paid." You feel them echoing within, wrapping around your thoughts like a constrictor. The figure's hand lowers, and though it says nothing more, the presence of its words linger, and they have stirred a part of you that cannot be silenced. Then, as if dissolving into the twilight, the figure fades, its form slipping into the shadows until there's nothing left but the stillness of the glade, the hum of the shard, and the image of those silent, sorrowful figures in the pool. The air remains thick, charged with that experience of what you've seen, and you stand there unmoving. Your hand tightens around the shard, feeling the steady warmth, the insistent tugging that has led you this far. The glade is silent once more, but the silence feels like a veil drawn over something vast and unknowable, waiting just beyond reach. You take a slow breath, the sound too loud in the emptiness, and finally, with one last look at the pool, you step back and move on to the next glade. The next glade emerges as you push through the dense twilight, and here, nestled amidst the twisted roots and looming trunks, stands a massive figure, at least 10 feet tall, hulking and immovable, carved from stone with stunning detail. At first glance, it appears to be a statue, its broad shoulders and thick limbs giving it the appearance of an ancient guardian. Its face is chiseled with harsh lines, brows permanently furrowed over empty eyes that stare unseeing into the glade. Cracked spiderweb across its body, the veined traces of green moss filling the grooves, as if nature itself has begun reclaiming this being. But the most striking feature lies in the center of its chest. There, set deep within a cavity of rock, is a shard embedded in stone, glinting with the same spectral light as the one in your palm. The shard pulses, syncing with the warmth of your own, as if calling to you, urging you to reach out and claim it. You step forward, wary but drawn to the shard, feeling the weight of its presence even before you lay a hand on the creature's stone chest. The shard within radiates an energy that feels archaic and raw, as if part of the power lies dormant, waiting for something or someone to set it free. With a sense of cautious purpose, you reach out, your fingers brushing over the cold surface of the embedded stone. The moment your hand closes around the shard, the warmth from your own palm rushes into it, igniting a spark between the two. You pull, feeling the resistance of stone against stone as you work it free. The shard trembles, almost as if alive, and with a final, forceful tug, you yank it loose, feeling its weight settle into your hand, and for an instant, there is only silence. Then a low, cracking sound reverberates through the glade, echoing off the trees. You watch, heart pounding, as the stone guardian's chest splinters outward from where the shard once lay, fractures spreading like veins through the stone. Bits of rock crumble away, falling to the ground in pieces that grow larger and larger as the cracks spread. The creature's head then tilts downward, and for the first time, it sees you, empty eyes blazing with a fury that feels as old as the earth itself. Its mouth parts in a silent roar, and a rush of stale air fills the glade as it takes its first breath in untold centuries. The ground trembles as it steps forward, every movement slow and heavy, each step accompanied by the sound of stone grinding against stone. Dust and bits of moss rain down from its shoulders as it lurches forward, massive hands curling into fists, fury radiating from its very core. You barely have time to react before it swings, a slow but devastating arc that sends a blast of air rushing past your face. You duck, feeling the force of its fist shatter the ground where you stood just moments before, sending shards of rock flying through the air. The creature's movements are ponderous but unrelenting, driven by an otherworldly rage that burns hotter than any fire. It lifts its foot, and with a single earth-shattering stomp, it sends a ripple of energy through the ground, the shockwave traveling toward you with deadly intent. The shard in your hand flares with heat as though it's urging you to act, and to fight back. You dodge the shockwave, barely keeping your balance as you scramble to the side, Dusk's embrace in hand. The creature follows, turning its head toward you, its empty eyes seething with the silent hatred that chills you to the core. You grip Dusk's embrace tightly, heart pounding as the creature's seething gaze settles on you with the unyielding malice. It advances, each step sending tremors through the ground, its massive, stony form radiating an aura of ancient, earthbound wrath. You sidestep as it lunges, bringing one heavy arm crashing down, but you're not quite fast enough. Its fist clips your shoulder, sending a searing jolt of pain through your arm and chest. You feel the sharp crack of bone, and your knees buckle as you stumble backwards, clutching your injured shoulder, vision blurring momentarily. The pain engulfs you, searing through your whole body with relentless force, until something else stirs, a strange, rhythmic heat radiating from the Bone Sovereign's crown around your wrist. It floods your arm, weaving its way up your shattered shoulder, and for a fleeting moment the agony ebbs, dulled by a calming warmth. But you remember all too clearly the scar on your other shoulder, a darkened reminder of the necromantic nature. You clamp your hand over the Bone Sovereign's crown, and gripping it hard, desperate to keep it in check. The warmth falters as you grit your teeth, exerting control, fighting back its influence. The pain surges anew as the healing force retreats, raw and unfiltered, leaving you gasping for breath. Yet you aren't alone with only the crown's hold, and from deep within the symbiotic crown responds to your injury in its own fierce and unrelenting way. You feel it act, a foreign presence within you, and suddenly the sharp tearing sensation blooms into your shoulder. Shadowed vines spring through your wrist, dark and twisting, shooting up your arm and into the wound, burrowing through the flesh like roots sinking into fertile soil. The symbiotic crown's vines work with ruthless precision, each lock winding around bone and muscle, pulling with a force that bypasses all restraint. You watch, horrified yet unable to stop it, as the vines set your broken bones, knitting them together with brutal efficiency. Every twist and every pull is agonizing. The vines don't ask for your permission or consider your comfort. They simply bind you back together, piece by excruciating piece. The vines cramp, each heartbeat sending another wave of pain through you as they work deeper, fusing the tissue, forcing the break to heal on their own terms, not yours or nature's. You struggle, trying to wrench your arm free, but the vines tighten, binding you in an iron grip, answering only to the Bone Sovereign's crown and the symbiotic drive to repair. They're not healing so much as claiming, leaving you whole, yes, but forever entwined with the dark, invasive power that flows through the crown. Finally, the vines withdraw, retreating back to the symbiotic crown, leaving your shoulder whole but throbbing with a raw ache of forced recovery. You feel marked, changed by the relentless union of the two crowns, the Bone Sovereign's crown and the symbiotic crown, bound by an authority that extends into your very bones, your very flesh. The creature lurches forward, its eyes still blazing with the unearthly fury. The ground trembles under its weight, and it swings one massive fist in your direction, each motion slow yet devastatingly powerful, like an avalanche crashing down. You roll to the side, feeling the residual sting in your shoulder, the dull ache flaring. The creature's fist smashes into the ground just behind your feet, sending shards of rock exploding outward in a shower of debris. You shield your face with your arm, but a sharp splinter grazes your cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. Gritting your teeth, you roll back to your feet and you circle the creature, searching for any weakness, any crack you can exploit. The shard within your palm pulls, an urgent warmth urging you to act, and as if answering that call, the Bone Sovereign's crown flares to life in your wrist, its energy rippling through your arm, strengthening you, feeding off the adrenaline and the urgency of the fight. Shadows coil around your hand, dark tendrils twisting with a will of their own as they mold themselves into a jagged extension of dusk's embrace, reinforcing the blade with a lethal edge of pure shadow. The creature's next blow comes down hard, and this time you raise the shadow-forged blade, catching its arm with a shuddering impact. The blade digs into the stony-like hide, splintering the rock and sending cracks spiderwebbing up its forearm. The creature howls silently, a resonance that vibrates through the air, an expression of pain and fury that only seems to heighten its resolve. It rears back, pulling its arm free, but you see the damage left behind, a cluster of deep cracks where your blade struck, a vulnerable point you could exploit. But before you can press the advantage, the symbiotic crown on your injured arm acts again, sensing the danger, the fight. Without your bidding, it releases dark tendrils that surge forward, reaching out like shadowed roots latching onto the creature's arm. The vines snake through the cracks in its stone skin, digging in deep, coiling with a possessive force that feels both alien and powerful. You watch in astonishment as they work their way along the creature's arm, anchoring it and tethering it to you. The creature struggles, trying to shake free, but the vines tighten, refusing to release their hold. Tendrils bound by the symbiotic crown pulse with energy, their grip unbreakable, and in that moment, you realize the crown is giving you a brutal opportunity, locking the creature in place and exposing its vulnerability. Seizing the moment, you tighten your grip on Dusk's embrace, feeling the combined power of both crowns surging within you. The darkness of the Bone Sovereign's influence merging with the symbiotic reach of the second crown. You step forward, driving the blade into the creature's chest with all your might, aiming for the core left exposed from where you'd removed the shard. The blade strikes true, plunging deep into the creature's chest, the sharp edge cracking through the stone and bone alike. The vines from the symbiotic crown press even deeper, amplifying the force of the strike, and for a moment, the world seems to hold its breath as your blade sinks into the creature's core. A seizure ripples through its massive form. Fractures begin spreading outward from the point of impact, splintering across its chest and limbs. Its empty eyes flicker, the light within them dimming as cracks cascade over its body, each line widening, splitting stone from stone. The creature lets out one final, silent roar, its face contorted in an expression that hovers between rage and a strange, sorrowful release. You pull back, watching as the creature collapses to its knees, the stone of its body breaking apart, disintegrating into chunks that crash heavily onto the moss-covered ground. With one last rumbling groan, it falls forward, the shattered pieces scattering in a cloud of dust and debris, leaving only fragments of stone and the lingering trace of the crown's dark energy hanging in the air. The glade falls silent, and the harsh weight of the creature's presence finally lifted. You let out a shuddering breath, feeling the energy of both crowns ebb back, withdrawing to a simmering, latent power that rests within you, coiling and waiting. Your shoulder still throbs, a reminder of the toll that power demands. But you stand victorious, surrounded by the remnants of the fallen guardian. A cold realization settles over you, a feeling of violation sharp and unshakable, like something sacred within you has been breached. Your body and your will. You were supposed to be in control, yet in those final moments, when you'd reached for strength, it was the crowns, not you, that took over, dragging you into their dark, relentless power. It was as if your body had betrayed you, compelled by forces beyond your command, yet bound tightly to your essence, twisting your strength into something alien. Your fingers flex around Dusk's embrace, but even the weapon feels distant, a reminder of your vulnerability. You feel less like a warrior and more like a puppet, manipulated by the crowns, the Bone Sovereign's dark authority, tightening around your will while the symbiotic crown writhes within, silent weaving tendrils digging through your very flesh. There's an invasive crawling sensation in your skin, the shadowy vines from the crown still echoing through your arm, the unmistakable memory of the way they'd seized control, moved your bones, and claimed your wounds as their own. You grip your wrist, fingers pressing against the Bone Sovereign's crown as if the force alone could pry it free, wrest control back. But the crown doesn't release. It merely hums, patient and powerful, as if mocking your attempts, reminding you of the inevitability of its bond. It thrums through you, a steady beat that feels far too close to your own heartbeat, blurring the line between where you end and the crown's will begins. The shard you claimed from the stone guardian lies in your palm, heavy and warm. Its surface glints timidly in the ethereal shine of the twilight glade, catching shadows that seem to dance across its surface, hinting at depths beyond its mere form. The pulse of this new shard syncs with the one embedded in your flesh, and the two resonate in a rhythm that is both foreign and unsettlingly familiar. For a moment, you study the shard, its weight almost alive in your hands, Though similar to the shard in your wrist, this one is more potent. You sense a latent power within, coiled and dormant, as though waiting for some specific trigger. Your fingers trace the edges, feeling the rough grooves, and as you do, a tingling sensation seeps through your skin, the shard's energy creeping up your arm like an intrusive memory. The crown on your wrist, the Bone Sovereign's crown, responds to the shard's energy. A warmth emanates from it, familiar yet somehow amplified, as if the crown recognizes this shard and seeks to draw it in, to make it a part of itself. The subtle vibrations grow stronger, blending with the shard's energies into a unified rhythm, a steady, compelling beat that tugs at your senses, drawing your hand to place the shard against your wrist where the crown lies poised. You hesitate, feeling the weight of its power, its pull, and that lingering memory of what happened when you allowed the crowns to take over during the last fight. Yet the compulsion is strong, almost instinctual, a beckoning that feels as though it's not entirely your own. You draw a shaky breath, glancing around the glade as if hoping for an answer in the shadows. Reluctantly, you raise the shard towards your wrist. The moment it touches the Bone Sovereign's crown, an intense heat surges through you and the crown tightens, old bone and new stone fusing for a brief searing moment. Tendrils of shadow snake from the crown, curling around the shard, binding it like roots encircling precious soil. The two shards resonate together, humming with a combined energy that races through your arm, sinking into your bones as if they're embedding themselves deeper than flesh. A vision bursts behind your eyes, a fractured memory not your own. The shard carries echoes of those who held it before. You see glimpses of towering monoliths, vast cities overgrown by twilight trees, and stone guardians watching silently from the shadows. The images swirl, chaotic and incomplete, but a single impression sears into your mind. The shards are fragments of something greater, a purpose bound to an ancient will, a design beyond human minds. The vision fades, leaving you gasping, heart racing at the weight of the shard's history. You open your eyes and find that the shard has embedded itself partially into your wrist, the tendrils of the symbiotic crown curling protectively around it, securing it to the Bone Sovereign's. You steady yourself, the weight of the newly claimed shard pulsing beneath your skin like a second heartbeat, entwined with the Bone Sovereign's crown. A sudden curious compulsion stirs within you, an insistent pull back through the glade like an unseen thread tightening. You turn, feeling the rough ground beneath your boots, and set off towards where you last encountered the bewildered creature with the bulging, rooted forehead and the big glassy eyes. The twilight deepens around you as you retrace your steps, each tree casting shadows that shift and lean as though observing your movements with a silent, immutable judgment. Low-hanging branches seem to shiver at your approach, stirring with a waning hiss, their tips reaching out, tangling with the thick underbrush that carpets the ground. An unspoken warning spreads through the twilight air, yet you press forward, ignoring the chill that pricks along your spine. When you reach the place where the creature had once been tethered, rooted by ancient twisting vines, you halt. It's empty. You step closer, crouching to inspect the mossy earth. The twisted roots that had bound the creature are now sprayed across the ground like skeletal fingers, stripped of their vitality, shriveled to brittle husks. The frailest scent lingers here, an indescribable musk, damp and tinged with something stale and long forgotten, as if the earth itself mourns the absence of its strange, pitiful ward. A stray gust rattles through the glade, sending a tremor through the branches overhead, and for a moment you think you hear the diminished, mournful moan that fades almost as soon as it reaches your ears, leaving only the heavy, loaded silence in its wake. The creature's eyes, those haunting and blinking orbs, flash in your memory, wide with a frozen blend of terror and imploring. A strange weight settles over you, a sense that you've missed something vital, something hidden within the bewildered creature's gaze that you failed to grasp. But there's nothing here now, only the ghostly remnants of something now absent. The shard thrums in your hand with the heat that seeps through your skin and bone, embedding itself deep in your veins until it feels as though your very blood pulses to its rhythm. With each step back through the twilight glade, the air thickens, gaining an unsettling density that presses down on you like water. Unsteady tendrils of mist cling to your ankles, curling and reaching, dragging through the low brush as though the land itself wishes to slow your pace. The landscape around you twists in subtle but sinister ways, each gnarled tree and slick patch of moss seeming to shift positions when you're not looking. Shadows cling to the ground in ink-black pools that defy the wavering twilight, stretching into unnatural shapes with each tentative step you take forward. Your footsteps sink into the spongy moss, which gives beneath your weight in a way that feels almost alive, giving hesitantly underfoot. The scent of damp earth fills your lungs, mingling with a sour metallic tang that clings to the back of your throat, heavy and unsettling like the memory of stale blood. The undergrowth rustles in muted, rasping movements, though no breeze stirs the air. Every sound, your breath, the quiet scrape of your boots against the moss, the faded calls of distant creatures hiding in the glade, feels amplified, reverberating against the otherwise dense silence that blankets this place. After what feels like an eternity of pushing through the tangled branches and sidestepping gnarled roots that rise from the ground like claws of buried giants, you see it. The bramble barrier, a wall of thorns and twisting vines stretching before you, massive and dark, its limbs twisted into shapes that seem half alive. Thorns as long as your fingers glint in the pale, spectral light of the glade, their tips slick with the sap that catches the fading luminescence and gleams wetly as if eager for flesh. The air here is thick with an acrid scent of resin, mingling with the sharp bite of decay. There, woven into the heart of the bramble's twisted snarl, is the archway. The frame rises from the ground like the bones of some ancient creature, its edges adorned with faintly glowing symbols etched in meticulous patterns. The markings sway subtly, their light dim but unmistakable, casting reflections on the bramble's thorny surface, as though the arch itself were alive, observing your return. The empty doorway looms, its frame wreathed in the bramble's thorny embrace, a silent invitation veiled in the shadows and silence, promising either revelation or ruin if you dare to cross its threshold. The brambles shiver as you approach, each thorned branch seeming to twist in response to your nearness, like a host of slumbering creatures rousing at your arrival. The silence here is thick, tangible, yet beneath it, you catch a murmur, a distant sound impossibly soft, as if woven from the very threads of twilight. It's a rhythm you recognize, though you can't place it. A pulse as old as the glade, thrumming with a quiet insistence just beyond the arch. Then, as if he were part of the shadows himself, the lantern-bearer emerges from the deep glade. His form is shrouded in billowing robes that flow like ink over water, merging seamlessly into the dusk-draped surroundings. His hood remains low, concealing any hint of the humanity beneath, and from the depth, you feel the unsettling weight of a gaze that lacks eyes yet sees all. The lantern he carries flickers with a peculiar light, a pale glow, uneven and stuttering, casting elongated shadows across the brambles and tracing light patterns over the archway's symbols. He moves slowly, his steps barely disturbing the moss beneath his feet. The air thickens around him, charged with an indefinable tension that settles heavily over you, pressing down with the weight of something ancient and unyielding, and bound to forces that defy mortal understanding. The lantern-bearer's very presence seems to warp the space around him. Light bends and undulates, and the shadows cling to him as though he draws them in, leaving the glade somehow dimmer and yet brighter in his wake. He stops just before the archway, the lantern casting a feeble circle of light that glances off the thorned brambles and reflects in dull glimmers along the symbols. His silence is a strange, heavy thing, filling the space with a force that grows more pronounced with every moment. The pale light of his lantern wavers, swelling and dimming in an almost deliberate pattern, the flickering casting his hooded figure in silhouettes that waver like figures in a dream. With a steady motion, he lifts the lantern, holding it aloft. The light within flares briefly, bathing the archway in a spectral glow that seems to seep into the stone itself, breathing a strange life into the symbols carved into its edges. As you watch, the symbols almost dance, echoing the rhythm of the lantern's light, as though stirred by some ancient recognition. The lantern-bearer pauses, his head hovering in place, and you sense a question lingering in the stillness, a silent inquiry that presses against the edges of your mind like a barely perceptible hum. His unseen gaze turns to you, lingering, assessing, and though no words pass between you, you feel the weight of an invitation, an urging, a gentle, insistent offering that tugs at the marrow of your bones. Without breaking the silence, he shifts, turns his lantern towards the darkened archway, and in that instant, you realize what he means to do. The light intensifies, filling the frame with a peculiar brilliance that seems to deepen the colors around you, thickening them like spilled ink. For a fleeting moment, the light casts the brambles in sharp relief, revealing every twisted vine, every wicked thorn, each one glistening wetly in the glow before it darkens once more. With a single silent step, the lantern-bearer moves forward, slipping into the archway's depths, the light of his lantern swallowed instantly by the void beyond. You're left standing before the bramble-bound arch, staring into the place where he vanished, the symbols on the frame dim again, sinking back into silence as though waiting for you to follow. You stand at the threshold of the gate, gazing into an abyss so complete that it seems to devour even the memory of light. Beyond the archway, there is a yawning expanse of nothingness, a void that stretches inward with a depth that defies comprehension. The lantern-bearer has disappeared within, leaving no trace of his passage, no echo of footsteps, not even the lingering glow from his lantern. It is as if he has stepped beyond the realm of existence itself, into a place where even shadows dare not tread. The air at the gate's edge is dense and unyielding, pressing against your skin with a chill that seeps into your bones. It feels unnatural, as if the boundary were the meeting point between reality and some otherworldly emptiness. The void before you is utterly still, absent of even the slightest whisper of sound, as though it lies beyond the grasp of wind and voice. It pulls you with an unsettling magnetism, a silent, insidious invitation that prickles at the edges of your senses, urging you forward yet laced with a warning. You extend a hand toward the darkness, and it feels as if the very air resists you, thickening in defiance of your touch. An odd sensation coils in your palm, a subtle vibration echoing from the shard embedded within your flesh, responding to the nothingness beyond the arch, as if it recognizes something in that unimaginable depth. The shard's warmth thrums faintly, almost uncertainly, casting the briefest flicker of warmth against the void. But the light is swallowed instantly, leaving you with an unsettling impression that this darkness is something more than just the mere absence of light. It is a presence, vast and patient. As you linger, you notice a scent drifting from the threshold, subtle and elusive, layered beneath the cold scent of stone. It's a smell that feels out of place in the glade, a hint of damp rot in forgotten spaces untouched by life, mingling with the metallic tang that lingers in the back of your throat. The scent clings to the air, settling in your lungs with each breath, filling you with a sense of desolation that matches the void stretching before you. A sense of quiet unease crawls along your spine, instinct screaming at you to step back, abandon this threshold and the silent dread it radiates. Yet the shard in your palm pulls you insistently, a warmth that defies the chill, urging you forward despite the vastness of the unknown. It is as if the shard itself is compelled by this darkness, seeking something within it, bound to a purpose you cannot yet fathom but cannot resist. You stand there at the edge of the gate, caught between worlds, the pull of the void before you balanced against the weight of the glade behind. The silence presses in, heavy and all-encompassing, filling the space within and around you. You realize with a shiver that ripples through your bones that once you cross this threshold, there may be no turning back. Only an endless descent into nothingness that waits patiently to consume all who dare enter. You take a breath, steadying yourself against the insistent pull of the void. With a final glance at the twilight glade fading behind you, you step into the nothingness, and in an instant, the world slips away. The ground vanishes beneath you, leaving you suspended in a limitless, directionless descent. You fall, tumbling through the vast emptiness, your body weightless, yet heavy with the strange, pulling gravity of this void. The silence here is absolute, a suffocating blanket that swallows all senses of sound or self. There is no air, no light, only the sensation of falling endlessly, spinning deeper into the dark, disoriented as all sense of self seems distant and unravels around you. The shard in your palm grows cold, its pulse weakening as though even this arcane power is lost to this place, leaving you utterly alone. Falling and falling. Your limbs grow numb, the chill of the void biting into your flesh, spreading through your veins with a dull, creeping lethargy. The blackness grows, consuming you until you feel it like a tangible weight on your chest. The last remnants of all other sensations fade, and slowly, and inevitably, you drift into unconsciousness, carried along by the silent, endless dark. You don't know how long you remained in this state, minutes, hours, perhaps longer. But gradually, a feeble awareness returns, squirming through the murky depths of your mind. You sense a pressure around you, a warm, thick membrane that clings to your skin, restricting your movements, close against your face, your chest, your limbs. You're encased, trapped within something that has an organic warmth, like flesh, that surrounds you in a suffocating embrace. Panic flares through you and you begin to struggle, pushing against the walls of this fleshy prison. Your hands press against the slick, pliable membrane and it gives slightly under your weight, but it holds fast, wrapping tighter around you as though resisting your escape. The pressure is almost unbearable, squeezing your lungs with every desperate breath, the damp air seeping into your mouth and nose, leaving a sour, acrid taste on your tongue. You push harder, kicking and twisting, your fingers clawing at the membrane that confines you. It's thick, almost rubbery, and each time you tear it, the material stretches and clings as if alive, as if reluctant to release its hold. You feel the edges of something sharp in your palm, the shard, still embedded in your flesh. With a desperate action, you turn the shard against the membrane, dragging its jagged edge across the wall of your prison. The fleshy material begins to tear, splitting open with a wet, squelching sound, and a growing, putrid stench rushes in, sharp and foul. You claw at the opening, widening the tear, forcing your way out as cool air brushes against your skin for the first time. With a final push, you break free, your body spilling out of the cocoon-like prison, tumbling forward in a mess of slick fluids and torn plant matter. You land hard on the damp, spongy ground, gasping for breath. The coolness of the air is sharp and refreshing in your lungs. You push yourself up, wiping the thick residue from your face and blinking in the pale light that surrounds you. As your eyes adjust, you take in your surroundings and a strange, almost surreal sight meets your gaze. Around you, strange plants rise from the ground like twisted, monstrous eggs, each one encased in a translucent, veined membrane that quivers faintly with an ethereal glow. The plants are massive, looming over you with an unexpected elegance, their surface slick with a viscous sap that drips down in slow, oozing trails. From within the other egg-like structures, you can make out vague shapes in a few, limbs and faces suspended in a state of uneasy sleep, held within their own organic prisons, their features slack and lifeless. The ground beneath you is soft and yielding, covered in a layer of thick moss that feels almost wet to the touch. The air is thick with a heady, overpowering scent of rot and damp earth. The egg you emerged from lies open behind you, split down the middle, its interior smeared with the dark fluids of whatever substance nurtured you in its unholy embrace. You pull yourself up, shaking but resolute as a low, distant hum begins to resonate through the air, the sound that seems to come from the world itself, vibrating through the strange landscape. You stand there, soaked and dazed, breathing hard as you take in the alien world that now surrounds you, each twisted plant and shadowed corner hiding a quiet, latent presence as if you've entered the very belly of some ancient and slumbering beast. Before you stretches a sprawling garden of luminescent flora, towering plants with translucent petals that glow from within, their light casting soft pastel hues across the ground in gentle waves. Each bloom is like a star, captured with a delicate prism, their light refracting into spectral rainbows that dance upon the mist-laden air. The stems twist upward like elegant dancers, their forms graceful and impossibly slender, while their leaves shimmer with an opalescent sheen, capturing hazy glimmers of light that seem to drift from nowhere. Vines cascade down from impossibly tall trees with silvery bark, their leaves spiraling in soft whirls as they sway gently in an unseen breeze. These trees are ancient, their trunks carved with intricate symbols that glow with a slow, golden rhythm like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The symbols are beautiful in their mystery, each line and curve suggesting secrets whispered by nature itself, secrets older than time, hidden within the stillness of the glade. To your right, a tranquil river of glistening water meanders through the lush terrain, its surface impossibly smooth, as if polished by unseen hands. It reflects the light from the flora above, creating an illusion of a star-strewn sky within its depths. Strange ghostly fish glide beneath the surface, their forms soft and insubstantial as if crafted from the fog and moonlight. They drift through the water with a serene grace, their scales gently shimmering, each one trailing a glimmering mist in its wake, like the dust of forgotten constellations. Above, the sky is veiled in an eternal twilight, neither night nor day, a dusky lavender expanse filled with soft wisps of cloud that seem to float close to the ground, creating the sense of an intimate and closed world. Here and there, delicate motes of light, perhaps insects or spirits, hover in the air, their glow soft and warm, adding to the ethereal quality. They move slowly, casting tiny beams of light that filter through the mist, illuminating hidden paths and alcoves filled with intricate crystal formations that grow from the earth like precious gems. At the heart of the glade, a massive tree rises, its branches extending far and wide, draped in radiant flowering vines. Its bark is a pale, ghostly white, patterned with veins of soft blue that glow faintly, beating in sync with the symbols carved along its trunk. The tree's crown stretches toward the sky with open arms, welcoming the twilight that filters down in a soft, dappled glow. Beneath its burrows, clusters of flowers bloom in spirals of color, rich purples and deep blues and soft whites, each one exuding a soft, heady fragrance that mingles with the sweet earthiness of the soil. There is a softness to this place, ancient and unbroken, a peace that feels almost sacred, as if every petal, every leaf, every whisper of water were part of a living symphony played by the natural world. The glade itself seems to breathe with a rhythm older than memory, the very air alive with the enchantment of forgotten ages. You can't shake the feeling that you are standing within the beating heart of something vast, something that knows you are here and watches with a silent and gentle curiosity. As you step forward, you notice paths marked by low, winding streams of glistening water, their surface now rippling with spectral lights that reflect a myriad of colors around you. The streams wind around elegant stone formations carved by time in some ancient, forgotten hand, each stone inscribed with symbols that glow faintly. Further ahead, your gaze falls upon a delicate, shimmering figure, standing near a circle of radiant blooms that seem to bend in reverence, their soft light casting an ethereal glow around her. She is as much a part of this place as the flora, her form blending with the soft hues of the landscape. Her robes, woven from petals and mist, shimmer with an otherworldly beauty, shifting between silver and violet, and her hair flows like liquid moonlight, curling in gentle waves around her shoulders. As you approach, she turns, her eyes meeting yours with a depth that feels ancient and wise, yet gently curious. There's a warmth in her gaze, though it's layered with the quiet intensity of one who knows secrets beyond your comprehension. This is a guardian, an enigmatic presence whose form embodies the beauty and mystery of this realm, both familiar and unknowable. She raises a hand in a gesture of greeting, her movement slow and fluid, as though time itself flows differently around her. When she speaks, her voice is soft yet resonant, carrying an almost musical quality that seems to blend with the sounds of the forest, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the trickling of water. "Welcome, wanderer," she says, her voice filled with a strange warmth. "You stand within the veil, a place that exists between worlds, woven from faded starlight. Few find their way here, and fewer still leave unchanged." She regards you thoughtfully, her eyes lingering on the symbiotic crown wrapped around your wrist, and an expression of recognition flickers across her face. "You carry a rare fate," she murmurs, reaching outward to you, though she pauses just short of touching your arm, observing your blackened scars. "Ancient powers are bound to you, bonds that both protect and consume. I offer you a path, one that few are given, but remember, every gift here comes with a cost, and knowledge often bears a heavier weight than silence." She steps back, giving you space to consider, her gaze unwavering yet patient. The glade around you seems to glow with a soft, keening light. The very world waits on the edge of your decision, attuned to the choice you now face. You take a deep breath, feeling the strange stillness of the stones embedded in your flesh and the crowns wrapped around your wrists. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, they lie silent and dormant, as though this place, this enchanting glade, holds a power strong enough to quiet them. The guardian watches you with an expression that's both serene and distant, as if she already knows what path you will choose. You nod at the small creature. The guardian's lips curve into a wry smile, her hand lifting in a gentle gesture, beckoning you to follow. "Then come," she murmurs, turning and leading you deeper into the heart of the glade. The path ahead unfurls in soft, luminescent light, the very air shimmering with traces of hidden magic. After a short walk, you arrive at a secluded glen, sheltered beneath the branches of an ancient tree with bark like smooth silver and leaves as dark as night. In the center of the glen, a delicate pavilion rises from the mossy ground, crafted from intertwined vines and tendrils of silvery mist. It shimmers as if woven from stardust, exuding an aura of profound serenity, timeless grace. Pillows and cushions line a ring around the center of the pavilion, filled with soft grasses and covered in fabrics that glisten like dew-laden petals. At the heart of the pavilion, a figure emerges from the shadows, a soft and beautiful woman, cloaked in layers of veils that cascade down like falling mist, their movements slow and deliberate. Their face is obscured beneath layers of gossamer lace, shimmering in the soft light, and their eyes glow from within the veil, two soft points of light that seem to see past your flesh and into the very heart of your being. They raise a hand in welcome, their voice a low, soothing murmur that fills the air with a sense of quiet, undeniable power. "You have come seeking dreams," they say, their voice layered with centuries of knowledge. "To know what lies hidden, to see what lies beyond. Take your place within the circle and close your eyes. I am Vayth Gwyrer." Her arm sweeps open invitingly, and you find a spot on the ground within the circle. "I invite you to join us." The glade is silent, save for the faint whisper of the creature's words and the gentle rustling of leaves overhead. You sink down into soft pillows, feeling the cushions embrace you as though the very earth wishes to cradle you. The air here is filled with the sweet fragrance of rare nocturnal blooms, their petals releasing a fine mist that swirls around you, filling your lungs with each soft breath. Breathe deeply. Vayth Gwyrer instructs, their voice a gentle command. Let the magic of the cove fill you. Let it draw you into the realm where even this waking world cannot follow. You inhale, feeling the mist settle within you, cool and weightless. Your eyelids grow heavy, your vision blurring as the world around you fades, slipping into a realm of soft shadows and distant stars. You sink deeper and deeper, lulled by the woman's presence and the land's soft embrace, until the veiled world falls away entirely. In this strange ethereal dreamscape, you find yourself standing in a vast expanse of starlit water, the surface as smooth as glass, stretching out in all directions beneath the endless indigo sky. The stars above are reflected in the waters below, creating an illusion of endless space, a universe contained within a single, quiet moment. And within this mirrored world, shapes begin to emerge, visions drifting through the starlit mist like whispers from another life. As you gaze into the depths of the mirrored pool, the vision unfolds around you with an eerie, dreamlike clarity. Figures appear, moving slowly through the mist, faces and forms both strange and hauntingly familiar, stirring emotions that lie just beyond reach. Each figure evokes a pang of longing, an unnameable sense of loss that lingers in your chest, a reminder of lives you cannot remember, of connections broken by time or by fate. Then, within the mist, you see a figure that makes you pause. You recognize yourself, or what was once you, or what might become of you yet. A version of yourself that stands whole, yet changed. This you walks calmly, clad in an aura of quiet power, carrying the weight of the crowns with ease, not as a burden, but as an extension of your own being. The symbiotic crown no longer binds you in vines of control, but instead forms a flowing vine-like pattern along your arm and torso, as though the power has become an artful tattoo, a part of you rather than a prison. The Bone Sovereign's crown is present too, resting upon your wrist, but its presence feels different too. No longer a harsh weight, but a symbol of balanced power. Your eyes hold a quiet intensity, focused yet gentle, as if you achieved a deep understanding of the forces within and around you. This version of you seems to move in harmony with the glade, walking through the shadow and light with equal grace, your presence an embodiment of balance. That version of you quickly fades and is replaced by a different version. This version of you is nearly unrecognizable, bound and twisted by the dark ancient power of the crowns. The familiar, once whole form is gone, replaced by something broken, a being held together by the very forces that consume it. You stare, horrified, as the vision shows a form that is more patchwork than flesh. Thick, jagged scars streak across your body, gaping wounds bound by the darkened vines of the symbiotic crown. The vines twist and writhe, securing your limbs, chest, and even your face, like chains that hold together a broken vessel. Your skin is marred with large black scars, each a reminder of the battles you fought and the toll the power you tried to wield took. Every limb, every piece of flesh is bound and stitched together by the relentless dark growths, as though you are merely a vessel for these ancient artifacts, a puppet for their bidding. Even your face is barely recognizable, eyes sunken, glowing like the creature you saw in the pavilion, your expression twisted with a hunger, a desperation that is both monstrous and profoundly sorrowful. The Bone Sovereign's crown, dark and terrible, rests heavily upon your head, merging with the symbiotic vines that encase you, as well as the others that you do not know. They form a macabre armor, holding you upright even as they drain your spirit, leaving you hollow and bound, a creature of shadows and regret. The two versions face each other within the mist, contrasting forms of the same being. one bound, twisted by the relentless hunger of the crowns, a creature of darkness and scars, the other an entity of serenity and strength, having found a fragile harmony. They stare back at you, each one a path, a choice waiting to be made. But then a jolt of cold spreads through your wrist, snapping you from the dreamlike trance. You look down and see the symbiotic crown around your wrist stirring, its dark vines writhing and tightening as though rejecting the magic of the glade. The calm serenity of the dreamscape shudders, the vision splintering around you, and you feel a surge of resistance within the crown, a force that seems to rebel against the glade's enchantment, clawing to bring you back to wakefulness. A searing pain then blooms in your arm, the vines sinking deeper into your flesh, their grip growing relentless, breaking through the peace of the dream. The crown's power flares, dragging you out of the dreamscape, its essence pulling you and wrenching you back into the waking world with a shuddering gasp. The sweet mist suddenly sour in your throat, the air thick and cloying like decaying flowers in stagnant water. As your vision clears, the gentle, veiled figure of the creature melts away, replaced by something grotesque, a form that defies beauty, defies reason, revealing a creature as ancient as it is vile. Its skin is mottled in sickly shades of ashen green and bruised purples, stretched tight over two long bones that jut from its emaciated form. Its face, now bare, is upside down on its head, gaunt with eyes sunken deep into its skull, their color a pale milky yellow that glows faintly with a ghostly glow, regarding you with an unnatural, feverish hunger. Long tangled hair drifts around its head, moving in slow, undulating waves, as though it were submerged underwater. The strands coil and sway with an eerie autonomy, some strands wrapping around the creature's skeletal shoulders, others slithering across the floor of the pavilion. The hair glistens, wet and dark, trailing thick droplets of something viscous and dark onto the pillows below. The creature grins, its mouth stretching too wide, lips peeling back to reveal rows of needle-like teeth, each one pointed and sharp, gleaming wetly in the low light. Its gaze locks onto you, filled with an awareness that feels both old and disturbingly intimate, as if it has seen countless souls before you and it knows every desire and fear that hides within your heart. "Ah, awake already," it croons, its voice a raspy whisper that scrapes against your ears, filling the air with the sound of brittle bones. "How unfortunate. I so prefer my guests unaware." The symbiotic crown pulses on your wrist, its vines constricting tightly around your flesh as though sensing the malevolence of this creature and instinctively recoiling from it. Pain shoots through your arm, grounding you in reality. The creature's smile fades as it notices the crown's reaction, its twisted features drawing into a mask of displeasure. From behind Vayth, Thol, Gwyrer, a familiar light flashes in the distance. "No, you're not mine to keep, are you?" It hisses, disappointment dripping from every syllable, its skeletal fingers twitching as though resisting the urge to reach for you. The creature's movements are fluid and unsettling, each shift of its body sending ripples through its hair, swaying with a hypnotic grace that feels both beautiful and hideously wrong. The pavilion seems to darken, the glow of the glade dimming as the creature's true nature fills the space. The flowers around you wilt, their petals curling inward as the mist thickens, the scent turning foul and stale like rot concealed beneath perfume. The pillows beneath you grow damp, soaked through with a thick, tar-like substance that clings to your skin as you pull yourself up, your every instinct screaming to flee. "You were meant to dream, to linger in my web," it growls, its voice a venomous whisper as it watches you with thinly veiled resentment. "I offer you visions, yes, but they come at a price, one you were too weak to pay." The creature's mouth twists, baring its rows of jagged teeth once more, its hair coiling angrily around it, like tendrils preparing to strike. The dark energy ripples from the crown, a defiant response to its anger. The vines around your wrist throb and tighten, sending a surge of protective strength through your body, pushing back the oppressive aura that clings to you. The creature hisses, recoiling slightly, its eyes narrowing as it watches the symbiotic crown's reaction with something akin to fear. The pavilion trembles, the air filling with an ominous buzzing as her form wavers, losing its solidity, shifting back into the ethereal mist. It glares at you with an expression that promises neither forgiveness nor mercy, its long hand clawing at the air as it fades, the tips of its fingers trailing thin, dark threads that dissolve into the darkness. You cannot escape these choices forever. It snarls, its voice an echo that reverberates through the glade. One day, the dream will come for you, and when it does, I'll be waiting. The mist around you clears, revealing the pavilion, now empty, the flowers drooping lifeless, their petals tinged with dark stains, as though tainted by the creature's touch. The glow of the glade returns, cautious, like the first light after a storm, slowly reclaiming the space from the darkness. As you pull yourself up, your breath steadying amidst the remnants of the malice, that slender glow catches your eye again. At the edge of the pavilion, the lantern-bearer stands, shrouded in soft spectral light. His form is partially obscured by shadow, his face still hidden deep within the hood of his robes, but the lantern he holds shines with a steadying, golden glow, casting delicate patterns across the ground and illuminating the wilted flowers around you. His arrival feels like a balm against the creature's lingering darkness, a present as ancient as it is quietly reassuring. The lantern-bearer tilts his head, regarding you from beneath the hood with an inscrutable expression, as if measuring your resilience, gauging the toll the visions and the encounter with the creature have taken on you. The soft light of his lantern flickers in a cryptic rhythm, casting long, shifting shadows across the pavilion's vine-made walls, as though he were speaking in a language of light and shadow that only the glade itself understands. With a silent, beckoning gesture, he lifts the lantern higher, casting its glow over a narrow path that winds through the glade. His intention is clear. He wishes to lead you deeper into the heart of the enchanted realm. The path he illuminates is lined with tall, spectral flowers that sway in response to his light, their pale petals catching the glow and reflecting it back like stardust scattered in the air. The lantern's warmth calls to you, a promise of guidance through the labyrinth of shadows that lie ahead. You take a step forward, drawn by the lantern-bearer's silent summons. Each stride feels lighter, the weight of the crown on your wrist lessened as if soothed by the presence of this strange, enigmatic guide. The flickering glow of the lantern weaves a path through the darkness, illuminating soft patches of moss and delicate vines that seem to squirm, as though alive with the magic that flows beneath the earth. The lantern-bearer moves with a quiet grace, his robes whispering over the ground, the lantern casting a warm golden light that drives back the darkness clinging to the edge of the glade. Despite his silence, his presence fills you with a sense of purpose, an unspoken understanding that this path is meant to be walked, that he too knows the duality of light and shadow, of power that consumes and power that balances. As you follow, the glade around you begins to shift, the trees parting to reveal a landscape bathed in ethereal twilight, the very air shimmering with motes of light that swirl like tiny stars. The pathway stretches ahead, leading to a distant grove where massive stone pillars rise from the earth, each adorned with intricate carvings that barely glow, ancient symbols etched in a language as old as the world itself. The lantern-bearer pauses at the grove's entrance, turning to meet your gaze, his lantern light flaring briefly before dimming, as if imparting a message only your heart can understand. The choice awaits, he seems to say, the path of darkness or the balance, a choice that lingers in the air, unspoken yet unmistakable. With a final cryptic flicker of his lantern, he gestures once more, leading you into the grove, the weight of the crowns upon you shifting with every step as if sensing the gravity of the decisions ahead. The path winds ever onward, the glow of the lantern guiding you through the depths of the twilight into the unknown. The lantern-bearer's light pulls you deeper into a ruinous chamber. Every step is thick with the weight of ages, of stories carved into the bones of this ancient place. You cross the threshold and the air changes, thicker and darker, charged with an unseen energy that hums with an old, unyielding power. The stone arches above seem to lean inward, as if watching, holding witness to whatever is about to unfold within the walls. You find yourself in a vast, circular hall, its towering pillars wrapped in thick, blackened vines that squirm subtly as though alive. In the center of the space, the ground dips down into a wide, shallow basin, its floor covered in intricate carvings that spiral outward like a great, unfathomable maze. Symbols of ancient power are etched into every inch of the stone, each line radiating a low, eerie glow. The designs seem to move, shifting with each flicker of the lantern-bearer's light, as if eager to awaken, waiting for some hidden signal. Above, a fractured ceiling exposes glimpses of the twilight sky, casting patches of pale light that fall like broken stars onto the ground. The air is filled with a quiet hum, a haunting melody that resonates through the stones and vines alike, an ancient song that seems to echo from the very heart of the earth. The lantern-bearer stands in the middle of the basin, his lantern held aloft, its glow casting long, twisting shadows that spiral outward along the carvings. Every instinct within you screams that this is a place of endings, a place of reckonings. A low vibration begins, weakly at first, like the breath of a storm carried on the wind. The stones beneath your feet tremble, reverberating with a deep, ancient resonance that rises up through your legs, lodging itself in your chest. This feels both overwhelming and strangely intimate, as though the chamber itself is breathing with you, each stone a lung, each crack a vein. And then, the black gems embedded within your skin begin to respond. First it's a dull throb, a rhythmic beat, but the sensation quickly intensifies. The gems are no longer just foreign fragments within your body, they are alive, writhing with purpose, moving with a will that is ancient and dark yet inexorably bound to you. The throbbing becomes a prickling heat, spreading through each gem, filling you with a strange, almost electric energy. It's not painful, not yet, but it hums with a raw, unfiltered power that grows with each passing moment, like an ember feed. The gems pulse against your flesh, their black surface shimmering, reflecting veiled glimmers of light from the lantern-bearer's lantern, as if they are waking up, stirring from a long, silent slumber. The room's atmosphere thickens, pressing down on you, making each breath feel like an effort. The air is thick, almost syrupy, carrying an unidentifiable scent. It's metallic, earthy like wet stone and scorched earth, mingling into something both unsettling and oddly intoxicating. You can feel the gems heating beneath your skin, almost painfully so, the warmth creeping outward, filling your limbs with a sense of urgency, of movement that cannot be contained. Your hands tremble as the sensation grows unbearable. Each gem now pulls violently, almost as though they are trying to tear their way out. There's an undeniable pressure building, a sensation that grows hotter, sharper, a searing heat that reaches a fevered pitch. The gems feel alive with purpose, alive with a will that is not your own, and it is pushing, pressing, clawing its way out of your skin, desperate for release. A flash of heat erupts from within you, sudden and all-consuming, filling every vein, every muscle with a blistering intensity, and then, with a burst of excruciating force, the gems begin to separate, ripping themselves from your flesh. The pain is raw and visceral, like white-hot needles dragging through every nerve, and you can't help but gasp, a suffering exhale that feels ripped from the depths of your being. The gems tear free, leaving open, smoldering wounds in their wake. Tiny embers flicker from the torn flesh, each one a spark of the dark power that now hovers around you. Upon their release, the gems fragment and shatter. A storm of shadowy fragments spinning in the air like fragments of a broken constellation. The gems swirl, gathering momentum, their black surface glinting with an unsettling luminescence. They float free from you now, untethered and spiraling around the lantern-bearer in an intricate, chaotic dance. Each fragment is sharp, jagged like shards of glass caught in a whirlwind, yet there's a strange elegance to their movement, a pattern hidden within the chaos, as if they arrange themselves according to some forgotten cosmic order. The lantern-bearer stands in the midst of this maelstrom, his lantern's light flickering erratically, its glow casting harsh shadows across the twisting shapes that encircle him. He doesn't flinch, doesn't move. Instead, he raises the lantern higher, the light flaring bright and violent, igniting the gems with a strange iridescent glow that seeps through their surface, illuminating the dark matter within. The gems pulse in response, their colors shifting, deepening as though they are absorbing the light, consuming it, feeding on it. The shadows cast by the lantern-bearers stretch and twist, bending and merging with the stones on the floor, creating a web of darkness that radiates outward, each line connecting to the ancient symbols carved into the floor and walls, as though they are veins drawing in the energy of the stones themselves. You stand rooted, transfixed, every sense overtaken by the surreal beauty and horror of the scene unfolding before you. The gems, the light, the darkness, everything merges, coalesces around the lantern-bearer, spiraling tighter and faster until the air itself seems to warp, bending under the weight of the energy that surges through the room. As you watch, the lantern-bearer's form undergoes a breathtaking metamorphosis, as if he is unraveling, each piece dissolving and reassembling into something both exquisite and monstrous. The gems orbit his body in a hypnotic dance of light and shadow. The gems' glow intensifies, casting fractured beams across his shifting form, illuminating each and every piece of his transformation in eerie, fleeting glimpses. His skin ripples and tears, scales emerging like dark, glistening armor that spread across his body. The scales shift and overlap, forming intricate patterns that seem to move with a life of their own, each gem casting an iridescent sheen over his newly formed skin. His limbs elongate and distort. What isn't already scale is torn asunder, fingers stretching into gnarled claws that gleam with an opalescent sheen, their tips razor-sharp. His back arches as his spine extends, a sleek, serpentine form winding down in coils that seem to grow longer and more powerful with each heartbeat. His mouth stretches into a maw lined with glistening, dagger-like teeth, each one catching the ambient light, reflecting the world back in shards. His eyes remain fixed, unblinking, yet within them a profound wisdom blends with a dark predatory hunger. The lantern, fused into his chest, casts an ethereal, wavering light, flickering with a rhythm that matches the silent heartbeat of the gems swirling around him. Dark, twisted antlers emerge from his brow, branching out like corrupted trees, framing his head in a crown of shadows and bone. His horns reach upward, crackling faintly as they touch the edge of the glade's twilight energy, channeling it downward in thin, mist-like wisps that swirl around him, merging with the pulsing aura of the gems. The gems pulse with a frantic energy, throbbing like a heartbeat, but the rhythm is off. It's discordant, a jarring counterpoint to your own. They vibrate erratically. The dragon serpent watches in silence, its gaze unwavering, as though this moment were inevitable. It had foreseen the parting of the black fragments from you, and its inevitable consumption. The gems spin and converge toward the dragon serpent, drawn to it as though by an unseen hand. As each one merges with the creature, its form shifts subtly, scales rippling with an iridescent gleam, flickering with power. The air grows dense with energy, and the atmosphere alive with a fierce electric tension as the dragon serpent absorbs the essence of the gems, each one bringing a new layer of power and darkness to its already imposing form. Its body stretches and contorts with each new gem, as though the fragments are strengthening it, fueling a transformation that goes beyond the physical. The light within the dragon serpent's eyes flares with a dark brilliance and a knowing gaze that holds the world within it, a reminder of forces beyond comprehension. The gems, fully integrated now, pulse with a rhythm that resonates through the stones, the air, and even your bones, a beat as ancient and relentless as time itself. The creature unfurls, extending its massive scaled body with a slow, deliberate grace. Its head lifts, horns casting long shadows across the chamber as it lets out a low, resonant hiss, a sound that vibrates through the air and through the stones, settling into the core of your being. The gems, now part of its essence. The dragon serpent appears even more powerful, a creature forged of balance yet veined with an undercurrent of darkness, raw and uncompromising. Along the belly of the dragon serpent, the flesh is raw, glistening with a dark, viscous sheen. Where the scales meet the exposed underbelly, they end abruptly, giving way to stretches of unprotected tissue, red and torn, where each breath strains against the delicate flesh, forcing it to stretch painfully against the exposed ribs. The ribs themselves, jagged and uneven, press through the skin from within, each curve casting shadows that add a haunting depth to the sight. With every movement, the flesh pulls taut, catching and stretching around each rib, creating fissured seams that ooze with each inhale, each twist of its massive body. The creature's underside reveals a rawness, an unfinished quality, as though in this transformation the dragon serpent had reached for something beyond its design, and the power forced it to bear the cost in sinew and skin. Its head turns towards you, the large, luminous eyes meeting yours, filled with a knowing intelligence and a strange, ancient sorrow, as if aware of the torment it carries. There is a beauty in the horror of it, a creature so magnificent yet so bound to suffering, bearing the weight of its own transformation with both pride and agony. It seems to hold no shame in the wounds that mar its body, the raw flesh that serves as a reminder of the power it has claimed and the suffering it endures to wield it. The creature lowers its head slightly, coiling its body as though bracing itself, and as it moves, the exposed underbelly stretches and contracts with painful fluidity, the muscles and sinew rippling beneath the thin, damaged skin. The rigid horns atop its head glint in the sullen light, casting shadows that dance along the walls, framing its gaze with an eerie halo of darkness. Deep purples, spectral greens, and midnight blues ripple across its body as it moves. You need range, and grab the dread hook. You let your gaze roam over the serpent, every movement and subtle weakness vivid through the ferryman's mask. You can see gems embedded in its flesh, the veins surrounding each one faintly alight, stretching across its skin like the roots of a tree. The gems seem to pulse in sync with the creature's heartbeat, each glow a silent rhythm counting down to an inevitable clash. The dragon serpent's eyes meet yours, twin pools of ancient knowledge and suffering. A silent understanding passes between you two, a recognition of purpose and fate that hangs heavy in the air. And then, in one fluid motion, it lunges, scales glinting as it slices through the ghostly luminescence with a deadly grace. Your reflexes take over, and with a surge of focus you step forward, swinging the dread hook with a precise and calculated arc. The hook latches on to the creature's exposed flesh, catching along the ribs where the skin's most vulnerable. With a fierce pull you tear downward, opening a gash along its underbelly. The beast recoils, an ear-splitting roar reverberating through the chamber, shaking dust and fragments from the stone ceiling above. The dragon serpent's tail snaps forward, a massive coiled whip aimed directly at you. You barely manage to dodge, feeling the rush of air as it smashes into the ground, leaving a cratered impression in the stone floor. The force of the impact sends tremors through the floor, nearly throwing you off balance, but you steady yourself and drawing a deep breath, you're ready for the next move. It coils tighter, muscles rippling beneath its shimmering scales, preparing for another strike. You advance, not giving it time to recover, the dread hook poised and ready. The dragon serpent's body slithers and rears, filling the chamber with a presence that feels alive and suffocating. A storm of scales and sinew. Its massive form coils into itself, preparing to strike, and its raw underbelly exposed for a fraction of a heartbeat. Every fiber of your being screams to keep moving, to stay just out of reach of those claws and that crushing tail. But then you step in, the dread hook raised, eyes locked on the pulsing, fractured flesh beneath the armor of the scales. The pull hook feels like an extension of your will, steadying your grip, but the air around it is thick and buzzing with a strange energy that prickles against your skin, as though even the weapon is responding to the dragon's aura. The creature's eyes flash, and in that instant, it surges forward, its head snapping toward you with a lethal speed that defies its size. You twist the dreadhook in an upward arc, intercepting the serpent's gaping maw. The metal hook catches on the edge of one of its jagged, exposed fangs, forcing the creature to recoil, snapping its mouth shut inches from your face. The close call sends a shiver down your spine, but there's no time to linger. Every move and every breath must be deliberate. Before you can take advantage of its hesitation, the dragon serpent's tail whips around with a terrifying speed. With reflexes owned by past battles, you raise the dreadhook, the metal pole a solid line of defense in your hand. The shaft intercepts the tail, the impact sending a bone-jarring shockwave up your arm. The serpent's raw strength forces you back several paces, your feet skidding on the stone floor, but you manage to hold your ground, bracing against the relentless push of the coiling muscle. The blow forces the dragon serpent to reorient, coiling tighter as it eyes you with a renewed intensity. In the ethereal light cast by the gems embedded in its flesh, you can see the raw fury etched into the lines of its form, the barely contained suffering that only adds to its rage. With a fluid, almost hypnotic motion, it slithers through the air, a resonant hiss filling the chamber as it encircles you, testing your defenses and looking for an opening. As it moves, you see through the ferryman's mask a slight flicker, a brief glint on its underbelly. One of the embedded gems is pulsing erratically, a slight crack along its surface reflecting the dim light. A weakness, it seems. The sight steals your resolve and you tighten your grip on the dreadhook, ready to capitalize on the opening. With new resolve, you step forward, feinting to the left and then darting right, drawing closer to the creature's vulnerable underside. The dragon serpent strikes, lunging in response, its jaws snapping dangerously close to your shoulder. You duck low, feeling the rush of wind as its head whips past you, and with a precise, calculated swing, you hook the dreadhook around the damaged gem. A brutal, satisfying crack resounds through the chamber as the gem shatters under the force of your pull. Shards of the dark crystal burst from the wound, glinting as they shatter into the air. The serpent's roar fills the space, a sound so raw and unbridled it shakes you to the core. The beast recoils, writhing in agony, its body twisting and undulating violently as if trying to shake off the pain. Yet even in its suffering it lashes out, a frenzied strike that catches you off guard. Its massive tail whips upward, and in a split second it connects with your side. The impact is brutal, a crushing force that sends you sprawling across the stone floor. Pain explodes through your ribs, the breath driven from your lungs, and for a moment the world blurs as you struggle to push yourself up, to regain focus. Through the haze of pain, you see the dragon serpent's form towering over you, its exposed underbelly heaving, the damaged flesh dark and glistening, the broken gem embedded in its skin, a mark of vengeance. It hisses, the sound thick with fury and anguish, and it coils closer, closing the distance as you scramble to your feet, feeling every bruise and scrape. Forcing the pain from your mind, you tighten your grip on the dreadhook, heavy but steady in your hand. The serpent's eyes ablaze, challenging you, daring you to face it head-on. You take a breath, steadying yourself, and with dreadhook in one hand, you advance, prepared for the next onslaught. The dragon serpent's body surges with deadly fluidity, muscles rippling beneath its jeweled scales as it coils again. Its eyes narrow, a flicker of cold intelligence gleaming beneath the rage. The creature shifts its weight, and before you can react, the massive tail arcs through the air. In an instant, you raise the pull hook, the weapon steady in your grasp, the only shield between you and the impending strike. The tail connects with a deafening crash. The force of the strike sends a jolt through your entire frame, rattling your teeth and tightening every muscle, but you stand firm, holding your ground. Dreadhook vibrates under the impact, the grip groaning under the sheer power of the serpent's assault, but it holds. The edge of the tail skims past, missing your face by inches, a rush of cold air tinged with the metallic scent of scales and blood. With a grunt of effort, you twist Dreadhook, angling to deflect the tail's momentum, redirecting the strike just enough to send the serpent's tail crashing into the ground beside you. The stones crack beneath its weight, shards of rock scatter across the floor, dust rising in a thin cloud around the serpent's writhing form. The dragon serpent reels back, momentarily unbalanced by the deflection, its eyes flashing with a mix of frustration and respect. The standoff stretches between you two, both of you poised in the silence that follows the clash, your breath heavy and measured, the beast's form tense and ready to strike again. The Dreadhook trembles in your grip, a reminder of the immense strength behind each of the dragon serpent's attacks. Yet you feel a grim satisfaction rise within you. You manage to turn back its fury, to hold your ground against the relentless might of the creature. As the dust settles, the dragon serpent binds tighter, a fresh glint of challenge in its gaze. You steady yourself, adjusting your stance. You tighten your grip on the Dreadhook, feeling the weight of the weapon as you take a single, decisive step forward, pushing into the creature's reach, close enough to feel the heat radiating from its raw, exposed flesh. Every instinct warns you of danger, but the fractured gem embedded near its neck glints with a veiled light, a target too vulnerable to ignore. In a single, swift motion, you thrust the Dreadhook forward, aiming for the jagged edge of the gem. Your hook finds purchase, latching onto the crystalline fragment with a satisfying crunch. With a surge of effort, you pull, twisting Dreadhook to wrench the gem free, hoping to destabilize the serpent's formidable power. The dragon serpent lets out a sound that's half snarl, half scream, a guttural roar that echoes through the stone chamber and rattles your core. Its body convulses, scales flexing and muscles contracting, throwing off waves of energy that shimmer like heat ripples. The gem loosens slightly, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface, but it remains embedded, resisting your attempts to dislodge it fully. In its frenzy, the serpent lashes out with one of its clawed forelimbs, a rapid, predatory strike. The claws rake across your side, tearing through your light armor and flesh alike with brutal ease. A hot, blinding pain erupts along your ribs, and you stagger, feeling warm blood spill down your side, soaking into the fabric beneath your armor, and pooling on the cold stone floor. You grit your teeth, forcing yourself to stay focused, but the pain is relentless. Every movement pulls at the wounds, each breath coming with a fresh wave of agony. Yet despite the blood flowing freely from the gashes, the crowns remain dormant, still slumbering as though assessing the gravity of your wounds and determining them bearable. The serpent pulls back, a glint of triumph in its gaze, sensing your weakened state. But you refuse to back down. You brace yourself, steadying the Dreadhook with both hands, feeling the slickness of your own blood on the grip. The gem still sits embedded within the dragon serpent's flesh, cracked and flickering, weakened, but not defeated. The dragon serpent draws back, preparing another strike, its form winding in on itself, ready to unleash its fury. Blood still drips from your side, pooling at your feet, each drop echoing the steady, ruthless beat of the beast's pulsing heart. But before the dragon serpent lunges, a figure stirs beside you. It's the bewildered creature, that gaunt, wiry figure with a face marked by wide, glassy eyes and a massive, twisted forehead rooted to the ground by the tendrils of ancient, tangled roots. With a silent cry, he hurls himself forward, his movements strained, as if he's fighting against not just the dragon serpent but the very earth that still tries to bind him. He stumbles towards the creature's exposed underbelly, his thin, wiry arms outstretched, and he begins clawing at the raw, bleeding flesh with an animalistic fervor, fingers digging in, relentless. His eyes are wide and glassy, reflecting not fear now, but a purpose so intense that it borders on madness. The sigils crossed over his massive forehead are flickering, glowing as though responding to the dark magic of the gems embedded in the serpent's flesh. He reaches forward and wraps his fingers around the pulsing crystal embedded deep in the creature's wound. The dragon serpent writhes and folds in on itself, taken off guard by the unexpected attack. The bewildered creature's hands tremble with the effort. With a final, agonized tug, he wrenches the gem free, a spray of dark, thick blood coating his arms, splattering across the stone floor in streaks of red and black. The dragon serpent screams, a sound so raw and powerful that it vibrates through the bones of the glade itself, a shriek that reverberates in the air within your own chest. The beast's head snaps towards the bewildered creature, its eyes blazing with an enraged recognition. It shifts its massive body, coiling its neck as it raises one clawed limb with slow, deliberate menace. The bewildered creature turns toward you, his expression shifting from bewilderment to a fleeting look of triumph, a glimmer of something close to recognition shining in his wide, unblinking eyes. And then with a single and swift and brutal strike, the dragon serpent's claw descends, slicing through flesh and bone in one merciless motion. A soft, choked gasp escapes the bewildered creature, his mouth parting as his eyes grow even wider. A moment of terrible, frozen clarity. His body trembles, his fingers still clutching the bloodied gem. His expression is one of silent pain, but there's something else there. A strange, fulfilled acceptance, as if he had always known this was how it would end. Slowly, the light fades from his wide blue eyes, and his body goes limp, collapsing to the ground at the dragon serpent's feet. The runes etched across his forehead flare brightly, and then they dim, extinguish, disappear for the last time. The sight of the bewildered creature's body, still and bloodied at the feet of the dragon serpent, sends a deep, visceral shock through your core. Your heart hammers in your chest, each beat heavy with the weight of a sacrifice that leaves an ache as deep as any wound the dragon serpent has inflicted on you. Grief and rage bubble up, dark and furious, igniting something ancient, something primal within you, a force that is waited, watching, ready to unleash. Without a conscious thought, the necromantic frenzy stirs, responding to the bloodshed, to the loss that fills the air like a heavy fog. The shadows around you darken, deepening to an almost tangible blackness that seems to throb in rhythm with your heartbeat. Slowly, figures begin to emerge from the darkness, spectral forms taking shape, warriors drawn from beyond the veil, their shapes flickering like embers in the wind. They aren't simply ghosts. They are manifestations of your grief and your rage, your very essence given form as if the fabric of death itself has bent to your fury. They rise around you, each one unique, their faces shadowed but their forms unmistakably poised for battle. They seem to share your anger, their features locked in expressions of grim purpose, spectral eyes blazing with a light that matches the burning fury in your own heart. They move in silence, as though this vengeance needs no words, each one radiating a quiet, deadly resolve as they gather around you. The dragon serpent senses the shift, its head tilting as it pauses, momentarily thrown off by the sudden appearance of these spectral phantoms. It hesitates, watching the shadowy figures with a weary, feral gaze, its body coiled in tense anticipation. And then, with a silent, unified motion, the phantoms descend upon the dragon serpent. They swarm the beast, a dark storm of wrath and grief made flesh, clawing and tearing at its exposed underbelly with relentless fury. Their hands, skeletal and wreathed in darkness, dig into the open wounds, widening the gashes left by the bewildered creature's last act of defiance, and ones you've left with the dreadhook. They claw at the pulsing flesh and spectral figures sinking into the serpent's scales, each touch burning like ice, drawing wisps of dark essence from the creature's form. The dragon serpent thrashes, its body writhing as it attempts to shake off the spectral warriors. Its roar fills the chamber, a desperate guttural sound that reverberates through the stone walls, shaking loose dust and echoes that cling to the air. It snaps its jaws at the phantoms, each bite passing harmlessly through them as they are mere shadows, yet each clawing spectral hand leaves new marks, tearing into the raw flesh, pulling at the sinew, widening each wound until blood flows freely down its scaled belly. You watch as the creature's focus shifts, its attention torn between the phantoms and its own mounting pain. Its eyes flash with panic, a flicker of vulnerability as it swings its tail and claws in futile arcs, unable to fend off the spectral warriors that cling to it like curses brought to life. The air around the dragon serpent grows thick with the dark, heavy scent of blood and decay, mingling with the ghostly, eerie glow of the phantoms as they work in unison, a silent, remorseless army. As the shadows tear into the dragon serpent, you find a moment to gather yourself. Your breaths come heavy and labored, each one a reminder of the wounds you carry on your side, of the toll this battle has taken. You press a hand to your side, feeling the warmth of your own blood seeping through your fingers. But the pain fades to a dull throb, your focus sharpened by the sight before you. The phantoms continue their relentless assault, their silent fury matched only by the dragon serpent's growing desperation. The beast's movement becomes sluggish, each thrash weaker than the last, its strength waning as the phantoms draw more of its essence away, leaving it vulnerable, exhausted, exposed. You sense an opportunity, a brief, precious opening in which the serpent's attention is fully consumed by the dark fury of your spectral allies. Gritting your teeth, you tighten your grip on the dreadhook, in dusk's embrace, feeling the weight of both weapons in your hands, steadying you. The moment to strike will come soon, and when it does, you know it will be a turning point, an end forged by the sacrifice and the fury that has brought you this far. In a final, desperate fury, it breaks free of the shadowy assault, twisting its massive form with terrifying speed. Before you can react, its claws lash forward, a blur of raw power and hatred aimed directly at you. The impact is brutal, a rending force that strikes across your chest. You feel its claws tear through fabric, skin, muscle, and bone, a searing agony that explodes through you. The force of the blow sends you tumbling across the floor, the ground rushing up to meet you as your vision blurs, every nerve alight with pain. You collapse, a strangled gasp escaping your lips as blood begins to pour from the deep gashes that now mar your chest. Each breath is a struggle, the air thick and heavy, filling your lungs with the taste of iron. For a moment, the world around you fades, the edges of your vision darkening as the pain threatens to drag you under. The dragon serpent's form towers above, its gaze fixed upon you, its eyes blazing with savage triumph. You feel your strength slipping, a coldness creeping in as the wounds drain the life from you. And then something shifts. The familiar, subtle, ancient force stirs within, answering the call of your weakened state. The Bone Sovereign's crown, the heavy circlet bound to your will, pulses with an energy that surges through you, steadying the wavering edges of your consciousness. Its weight settles upon you with a powerful grounding presence, a reminder of the dominion you wield, of the forces that refuse to let you fall so easily. Strength and resolve, a relentless will that infuses you, pouring into the places where your body threatens to fail, reminding you of who you are. In tandem, the symbiotic crown responds, tendrils of energy unfurling from it like living veins of dark pulsing light. They slither across your wounds, weaving through the torn flesh, their touch cold and numbing as they knit across the deep gashes. The tendrils do not heal completely, but instead they stabilize, slowing the relentless flow of blood, binding the wounds just enough to keep you alive, to keep you on your feet. The pain dulls, replaced by the strange, eerie calm, a sensation that feels unnatural, as though you're bound by something beyond flesh, a force that keeps you moving forward despite the damage you've sustained. With a shuddering breath, you rise from the ground, blood still trickling down your chest but no longer a river, steadied by the crown's intervention. Your body trembles, yet the resolve in your heart is unwavering. The dragon serpent watches, momentarily stunned by your resurgence. its eyes narrowing as it realizes the depth of the power you wield. Your hands tighten around the grips of the dread hook in Dusk's embrace once more. Each breath sends a dull ache through your chest, but you push it aside, fueled by the fire of survival, by the weight of the crown's power coursing through you. This is the battle's crux, a moment balanced between life and death, a struggle that goes beyond flesh and bone. The chamber feels alive around you, every shadow thrumming with the weight of your struggle. Blood pools beneath you, each pulse of pain a reminder of the fragile line you walk between survival and oblivion. But the Bone Sovereign's crown pulses against your wrist, filling you with a raw, unyielding energy, a power that digs deep into your spirit, amplifying every instinct, every fragment of your remaining strength. The symbiotic crown mirrors this surge, its dark tendrils rooting you to the present, sharpening your focus and binding together the pieces of you that strain against the pull of the blood-soaked stone. With a final breath, you rise, your leg shaking but unbroken, your grip tightening on the dreadhook. The dragon serpent is staggering now, its massive body heaving with exhaustion, blood dripping from a dozen wounds inflicted by the spectral hands, mortal weaponry, and one loyal sacrifice. Its eyes blaze with a desperate fury, but beneath that there's something else. A look of fear, as if it too senses the shift, the looming end. Without a moment's hesitation, you launch forward, swinging the dread hook in a wide, powerful arc. Your hook catches the jagged edge of the serpent's open wounds, digging into the torn flesh where the phantoms have clawed and the bewildered creature left his mark. You feel the weapon connect, feel the hook sink into muscle and sinew, and with a fierce, primal yell, you wrench it downward, tearing deeper into the soft, exposed underbelly. The dragon serpent thrashes, its tail lashing wildly, its claws scraping at the stone in a desperate attempt to dislodge you. The force of its movement sends tremors through the ground, but you hold fast, every fiber of your being focused on maintaining your grip. Blood, dark and viscous, sprays from the torn flesh, coating your hands and soaking into your clothes, the scent of iron thick in the air. You press forward, twisting the dread hook deeper, ripping past the muscle into the core of the creature's being. Its roar fills the chamber, a sound of rage and agony that reverberates in your bones, but you keep pulling and pushing, feeling the resistance of each sinew, every tear, as though every inch you pull brings you closer to the very heart of the beast. The Bone Sovereign's crown pulses again, flooding you with a surge of power, a strength that feels ancient and vast, beyond the limits of mortal endurance. You feel your arms steady, your stance firm as you channel the crown's energy, pushing your weapon even deeper. The dragon serpent shudders, its once mighty form reduced to a trembling, bleeding mass, each motion weaker than the last, as though the weight of its own suffering has finally broken it. And with one final, forceful pull, you tear the dread hook free, ripping a gaping wound along the serpent's underbelly. The beast lets out a final shuddering roar, a sound filled with the last remnants of its strength, its defiance fading into a mournful echo as it staggers back, its eyes, once blazing with fury, now dim, a flicker of resignation passing over its features. Blood pours from its wounds, pooling around its ragged body as it sways, struggling to hold itself upright. For a brief moment, it locks eyes with you, a glint of something almost like respect flashing within its gaze before its head droops, the weight of its injuries pulling it down. You step back, the dread hook heavy in your grip, your own blood mingling with the creature's, your breath ragged but filled with a fierce satisfaction. The battle has shifted, the final moments hanging in the balance, and victory is almost within reach. The dragon serpent lets out a final, ragged breath, a hollow exhalation that seems to draw the last echoes of power from the chamber. Its massive form collapses, scales clattering like distant thunder as it settles into stillness, the life draining from its eyes. The subtle glow of the embedded gems dims, their once fierce light extinguished, leaving only dull fragments amidst the gore of torn flesh and shattered bone. Silence descends, a weighty, reverent quiet that settles over the chamber, filling the air with an almost sacred stillness, You stand amidst the wreckage of the battle, chest heaving, the taste of iron and ash in your mouth, bloodied hands still gripping the dreadhook. It takes a moment for reality to settle. The dragon serpent is gone. But the victory feels bittersweet, tinged with the cost that this battle demanded, a price paid in blood and loyalty. Turning, you approach the still, gaunt form of the bewildered creature lying nearby, his once glassy eyes now closed, his body draped in a stillness that feels too final. He seems smaller in death, a humble figure, a life given freely in the hope of something greater. Gently you place a hand over his chest, feeling the coolness of his skin, the roots that once bound him to the glade now lying frayed and broken beside him. For a moment, you bow your head, honoring him in silence, letting the gratitude and sorrow mingle in your heart. His face, once bewildered and confused, seems at peace now. You find yourself murmuring a quiet thanks, a tribute to the loyalty he showed, the courage he summoned in his final moments. In his palm, still clasped tightly, is the shard he once lifted to you, the faded lines and the sigils etched along its surface now pulsing with a dim, dormant glow. Gently, you pry it from his grasp, feeling the smooth, cool surface settle into your hand, its energy subdued but steady, as though waiting for the next chapter of its journey. The shard feels lighter than before, a fragment of his spirit perhaps now woven into its essence, a final gift that ties his memory to yours. With the shard in hand, you turn toward the fallen form of the lantern-bearer, the dragon serpent who once wielded power with such grace and pain. Its body lies stretched across the stone floor, its underside raw and exposed, in the finality of death. The head, once adorned with fierce knowing eyes, now rests in a quiet stillness, its horns casting long, sharp shadows across the ground. The shard in your palm warms, its light strengthening slightly as you approach, as though sensing the proximity of its final resting place. With careful steps, you move through the chamber, collecting the shards scattered among the fallen stones and pools of blood. Each one rumbles quietly as you lift it, a soft resonance that thrums through your fingertips, pulsing in sync with the shard already clutched in your hand. Together, the fragments vibrate, each piece calling to the others with a strange, insistent energy, as if they have been waiting for this moment to reunite. One by one, you gather them, holding them in your palm until the final shard rests alongside the others. The moment they are together, the fragments begin to shift and vibrate, pulling toward one another with a magnetic force. They fuse seamlessly, merging into a single large gem that glows with a deep iridescent light. Colors ripple across its surface, blues, purples, and greens, a mirrored echo of the dragon serpent's scales, as though its essence lingers with its unified form. The gem pulses, its glow intensifying, filling the chamber with a light that feels newly born. And suddenly, without warning, the light fractures, the gem splitting apart in a swift, sharp motion. You feel the shards reconfigure, shattering into 6 perfectly identical stones, each one a smaller, sharper version of the original, but imbued with the same intense energy. They hover off of your hand for a moment, suspended around you. Then they dart downward with surprising speed. The stone circles your right leg, each one emitting a transient hum, a whisper of latent power. Before you can react, they press into your flesh, embedding themselves just beneath the skin with a warmth that feels almost like a heartbeat. The stones settle, binding themselves into your leg, a stinging pulse sinking deeper, intertwining with muscle and bone but becoming a part of you. Suddenly visions descend in waves, too suddenly, flooding your mind with images so vivid that they nearly drowned out the present. You see the lantern-bearer and the bewildered creature as they once were, 2 brothers standing side by side in a glade untouched by darkness. The elder brother, the lantern-bearer, was tall and proud, with an intense, searching gaze and a quiet strength in his eyes. The younger brother, his face marked by the fire of youth, stood at his side, his expression open and filled with devotion. They looked at each other with a bond that's deeper than blood, a connection forged by shared battles, laughter, and trust. As the visions unfold, you watch the elder brother, the lantern-bearer, meet with the Fae, its form shimmering with a light that is both beautiful and dangerous, a glint of mischief and promise dancing in its eyes. And he bargains with it, his words lost to the mists of memory, but his intentions are clear. He seeks power, something grand and all-encompassing. He craves the strength to protect and perhaps to transcend his own limits. The Fae tilts its head, considering him with a smile that hides countless secrets, and then it nods. The price is both of the brothers' voices. And the Fae takes them, a shimmer of stolen breath leaving his lips as he falls silent, his words lost forever, but in return, the Fae grants the eldest a magnificent artifact. The Twilight Crown, its jewel glowing with a dark and beautiful light, the embodiment of the glade's ancient magic. As he dons it, he is transformed, the power seeping into his soul, but with it his body begins to shift, twist and transcend his human form. His eyes grow sharper, his teeth elongate, and his very essence warps into something both more and less than human. Horrified, the younger brother watches his once beloved kin become a creature of eerie beauty and monstrous power, a being that defies the laws of nature. Desperate to save his brother from this fate, the younger brother confronts him, the lantern-bearer's form now a twisted shadow of the man he once knew. In the ensuing struggle, the younger brother takes up his weapon and shatters the crown's jewel. The fragments scatter like stars into the earth, but the crown cannot be wholly destroyed. Its power endures, dispersed across the glade, lying dormant. And for ages, the two brothers clash, neither one fully able to overcome the other. They steal fragments of the crown from each other, a game of eternal rivalry in desperate attempts to either reclaim or control or save the Twilight's cursed power. The fragments become a symbol of their shared fate, tokens of a shattered brotherhood bound by ancient magic in an unbreakable bond that refuses to fade. But as the centuries pass, they grow old, their once strong bodies weathered by time and their eternal struggle. The younger brother, wearied by the endless fight, is forced to face the truth. His elder sibling will not be stopped by mortal hands alone. And so, he returned to the Fae, the same being that twisted his brother and offered himself up. The Fae listens, intrigued by the younger brother's devotion, and grants his request, but at a cost far greater than any one he could have imagined. In exchange for a way to contain his brother, the younger brother surrenders his freedom. He is transformed, his forehead growing massive and his body bound by thick twisting roots that anchor him to the earth, leaving him unable to move. In turn, the Fae created the stone-skinned guardian, encased the shard inside, and set it to slumber until the stone was taken. And so he remained, rooted to the earth, eyes wide with bewilderment, unable to speak and unable to move, watching the twilight glade shift around him, endlessly bound to his silent vigil. As the visions begin to fade, the remnants of the lantern-bearer's story slipping back into the twilight from which they came, you're left standing in silence, your heart racing, your mind awash with the echoes of the ancient memories. The chamber dims, the energy dissipating, leaving only the faint shimmer of the gems before they settle once more within your skin. You glance down, a strange sensation tingling across your skin. Where the blackened scars once marred your body, new patterns emerge, spreading like delicate webs across your flesh. Iridescent scales shimmer in hues of blue, violet, and green, covering the scars overlaying them in a protective, resplendent layer that seems almost alive. Each scale reflects the light in unique patterns, creating a subtle prismatic effect as you move. The sensation of the scales is strange yet comforting, like a shield woven from the twilight itself. They feel cool and resilient, a gift from the twilight's magic, bonding you to the glade's power and to the journey that has transformed you. Your scars, once marks of pain and survival, are now adorned, given new life, as if the glade itself has chosen to honor your resilience. A realization dawns slowly, creeping in like the glade's mist, both unsettling and strangely empowering. You lift your hand to examine the iridescent scales that now cover your scars and your forearms. The once darkened, painful marks transformed into something almost beautiful, but something alien. They shimmer with a quiet strength, each scale a subtle reminder of the twilight's power and the path you've walked to reach this moment. It's a transformation that feels profound and irreversible. The threads of ancient magics have woven themselves into your very being, merging with your flesh, your bones, your essence. As you flex your hand, the scales ripple with your movement, alive in a way that feels unfamiliar yet deeply connected. The air around you seems sharper, filled with sensations you hadn't noticed before. The faint hum of unseen energies, the subtle pull of the earth beneath you, the whispers of something vast just at the edge of hearing. A quiet thought rises within. You are no longer the same. The glade's magic, the twilight power bound in the shards, each one of the crowns, they have changed you, slowly, but deliberately, until you stand here, not quite as human as you once were. Hey guys, Alias here. Wanted to say thank you for listening to my story. If you have made it this far and you are still awake, thank you. Seriously, these stories take a long time to write and they take a lot of time to record. 2.5 hour stories are no easy task. Recording alone just takes at least double the time because I have to listen to my playbacks and blah, blah, blah. You don't care. Thank you for being here. And if you made it this far, give it a like. Give me a sub if you want to do that, if you want to hear more of this story. I will continue writing in the Ashenbound universe. And the Ashenbound universe is also opened for anybody to write in. I have a whole, writing universe rule book that you need to vaguely follow on the Reddit. I find the straying from the rules to be kind of what gives the moral ambiguity of the story its moral ambiguity. Like, comment, share, and I think that's all. Okay, thanks, bye!